The morning sun cast long shadows across Silver Peak's abandoned Main Street as my Range Rover navigated the crumbling asphalt. 5 years had passed since I'd first driven down this road, seeing potential where others saw only decay. Now, as construction crews prepared for another day of transformation, I could barely recognize the former ghost town I'd purchased for less than the price of a San Francisco apartment. My phone buzzed with a message from my assistant. The Bloomberg reporter will arrive at 10. The Wall Street Journal wants to move their interview to tomorrow. Also, Google's development team is requesting another meeting. I smiled, remembering the very different messages I'd received when I first proposed investing in Silver Peak. Rebecca Chen has lost her mind, the venture capital forums had declared, throwing away her tech fortune on a dead mining town in the middle of nowhere. They hadn't understood what I saw when I first visited Silver Peak, a perfectly preserved piece of American history, situated in a valley with ideal conditions for what I envisioned as the future of technological innovation. The town's isolation, once its greatest weakness, would become its strongest asset. The former mining town sat in a natural bowl surrounded by mountains, creating a controlled environment perfect for testing autonomous vehicles, drone delivery systems, and other technologies that needed space and privacy to develop. The consistent weather patterns and minimal interference from other radio signals made it ideal for advanced communications research. But what truly set Silver Peak apart was its infrastructure. The abandoned silver mines had left behind an extensive network of underground tunnels and chambers, naturally temperature-controlled and perfect for data centers. The town's original power station, built to serve the mining operations, could be modernized to provide sustainable energy. Even the old railroad line, though long dormant, offered potential for future transportation solutions. I had discovered Silver Peak during a weekend drive, taking a break from the pressures of running my successful cybersecurity company in Silicon Valley. The GPS had malfunctioned, sending me down a series of increasingly remote roads until I found myself in what appeared to be a movie set for a Western film. The town wasn't completely abandoned. A handful of residents remained, mostly elderly people whose families had lived there for generations. They maintained a small general store and a diner that served surprisingly good coffee. It was in that diner, talking with the locals, that I began to see the possibility of something extraordinary. Martha Wilson, the diner's owner and unofficial town historian, had shared the town's records with me. Silver Peak used to be a hub of innovation, she explained. The mining companies developed new technologies here, tested new methods. This valley has always been a place where people pushed boundaries. The more I learned, the more convinced I became. The town's elevation and geographical features created a natural testing ground for new technologies. The abandoned buildings, many still structurally sound, could be repurposed for modern use while maintaining their historical character. I spent 6 months researching, developing plans, and trying to secure investors. The response was uniformly negative. Remote work is one thing, one venture capitalist had said, but you're talking about building a tech hub in the middle of nowhere. No one will come. Finally, I decided to fund the initial phase myself. I had earned enough from my cybersecurity company's IPO to take the risk. The purchase of the town and surrounding land was surprisingly straightforward. Most properties had been in tax default for years. The first year was focused on infrastructure. We restored power and water systems, installed fiber optic networks, and began converting the most stable mine shafts into preliminary data center spaces. The few remaining residents became our earliest employees and strongest advocates. Martha's Diner became our unofficial headquarters. Over countless cups of coffee, we planned the transformation of Silver Peak into what I called an innovation district, a place where technology companies could develop and test new ideas away from the constraints and prying eyes of urban environments. The turning point came when a major autonomous vehicle company discovered our testing facilities. They had been struggling to find suitable locations for real-world trials of their technology. Silver Peak's empty streets and varied terrain provided the perfect environment. Their successful testing program attracted attention. Other companies began to inquire about the possibilities. Soon, we were fielding calls from drone manufacturers, renewable energy researchers, and artificial intelligence developers. The town's transformation accelerated. We restored historic buildings while maintaining their character, creating unique office spaces that blended Old West architecture with modern technology. The old Silver Assay office became a high-tech conference center. The saloon was reborn as a networking hub where engineers and entrepreneurs could collaborate. But we didn't just preserve the buildings, we preserved the town's spirit. Every new development had to meet strict guidelines ensuring it contributed to both innovation and community. We built housing that respected the valley's natural beauty while providing the amenities tech workers expected. The original residents became integral to the town's new identity. Martha's Diner expanded into a farm-to-table restaurant that became famous among Silicon Valley executives. Other locals started businesses catering to the growing tech community, while sharing the town's history and character with newcomers. 2 years into the project, the first major tech company announced plans to build a research facility in Silver Peak. Their decision validated our vision, but it also brought new challenges. How could we grow while maintaining the unique environment that made Silver Peak special? The answer lay in careful planning and a commitment to sustainable development. We implemented strict guidelines for new construction, ensuring that modern facilities blended with the historic architecture. Every project had to contribute to the town's ecosystem of innovation while respecting its heritage. As word spread about Silver Peak's transformation, the same investors who had dismissed the project began to take notice. Their inquiries were met with polite but firm responses. We were no longer seeking outside investment. The town's success had attracted more interest than we could accommodate. One morning, as I watched the sunrise paint the mountains in golden pink, Martha joined me on the diner's porch. "You know what makes this different from the silver boom?" she asked. "This time, we're mining ideas instead of minerals, and ideas don't run out." She was right. Silver Peak had become something unique in the tech world, a place where innovation could happen organically, away from the pressure and chaos of traditional tech hubs. We had created an environment where creativity could flourish while preserving the character that made the town special. The construction crews were starting their day now, carefully restoring another historic building that would soon house a quantum computing research team. The morning air filled with the sounds of progress, but not the frantic pace of urban development. Here, growth happened thoughtfully, purposefully. My phone buzzed again, another major tech company requesting a site visit. They would have to wait. We had learned to be selective about who we invited into our community. Silver Peak's value lay not just in its facilities but in its carefully cultivated environment of innovation and collaboration. The ghost town that investors had mocked was becoming the most exclusive address in tech, but our real success wasn't measured in property values or corporate tenants. It was measured in the ideas being born here, in the technologies being developed, and in the community we had built. The Bloomberg reporter arrived precisely at 10, her expression shifting from skepticism to amazement as she took in Silver Peak's transformation. We met in the restored Grand Hotel, its Victorian architecture now housing a state-of-the-art conference center while maintaining its historical elegance. "This is remarkable," she said, noting the seamless blend of past and future. "But what really interests me is how you've managed to attract such significant technology companies while maintaining the town's character." The answer lay in our carefully structured development approach. We had created what we called the Silver Peak Protocol, a framework that governed how companies could integrate into our community. It wasn't just about building facilities, it was about contributing to an ecosystem of innovation. "Every company that establishes a presence here must meet 3 criteria," I explained. "They must contribute to our technological infrastructure, participate in our knowledge-sharing initiatives, and demonstrate commitment to preserving the town's unique character." This selective approach had created unprecedented demand. Major technology companies weren't just requesting space, they were competing for it. The valley that investors had once dismissed as worthless now commanded premium prices, with companies willing to pay extraordinary sums for the privilege of joining our innovation community. The transformation reached a new level when Tesla announced plans to build their advanced research facility in Silver Peak. Their decision triggered a cascade of interest from other industry leaders. Suddenly, the town that had been a ghost story in the tech world became its most coveted address. Google's development team arrived the following week, their executives expressing amazement at what we had created. "This isn't just a tech hub," their chief innovation officer observed. "This is the future of technological development." They were particularly interested in our underground data centers, the former mining tunnels now housing some of the world's most advanced computing systems. The natural cooling properties of the mines had created an energy-efficient solution to one of tech's biggest challenges. Microsoft and Apple soon followed with their own proposals. Each wanted to establish research facilities in Silver Peak, recognizing the unique advantages our location and infrastructure provided. But we maintained our selective approach, ensuring each new addition contributed to the town's ecosystem rather than merely exploiting it. The bidding war that ensued made international headlines. Silicon Valley giants' battle for ghost town gold read the Wall Street Journal's front page. The irony wasn't lost on those who had initially mocked the investment. Martha's Diner had evolved into an exclusive gathering spot where tech leaders met to discuss collaboration and innovation. She had maintained its authentic character while adapting to serve her new clientele, creating a unique space where Silicon Valley executives could escape the pressure of corporate environments. "You know what makes this place special?" she asked one morning, serving coffee to a group of tech CEOs. "It's not just the facilities or the location, it's the spirit of the place. We're still a mining town, we just mine different treasures now." The original residents who had stayed through the transformation became integral to the town's success. Their deep connection to Silver Peak's history helped maintain its authenticity even as it evolved into a technological powerhouse. Many found new careers supporting the innovation ecosystem, while others became valuable advisors on preservation and community development. 5 years after my initial purchase, Silver Peak had become something unprecedented in the tech world, a place where cutting-edge innovation coexisted with historical preservation, where technological advancement respected community values, and where collaboration trumped competition. The value of the property had increased beyond even my optimistic projections. Conservative estimates placed it in the billions, with major tech companies willing to pay premium prices for any available space. But the real value lay in what we had created, a new model for technological development that could be replicated in other forgotten communities. Universities began sending students to study our development model. Urban planners arrived to learn how we had balanced growth with preservation. Government officials sought insights into creating innovation hubs in their own regions. We established the Silver Peak Institute to share our experiences and help other communities explore similar transformations. The institute focused on identifying locations with potential for technological development while preserving their unique character and history. The same venture capitalists who had dismissed the project now sought to invest in similar opportunities elsewhere, but they often missed the crucial element that had made Silver Peak successful: the understanding that true innovation requires more than just facilities and funding. It needs an environment where creativity can flourish. Today, as I watch autonomous vehicles navigate our streets while drones test new delivery systems overhead, I'm reminded of those early days when everyone thought I had lost my mind. The ghost town they had mocked has become a living laboratory for the future of technology. The old mining company offices, now restored to their former glory, house our town administration. From my window, I can see the careful balance we've maintained: historic buildings alongside modern research facilities, all unified by thoughtful design and respect for the valley's natural beauty. Last week, a young entrepreneur asked me what I saw when I first visited Silver Peak. "I saw possibility," I told her, "not just for profit, but for creating something unique, a place where technology could advance without losing touch with history and community." The latest bids for space in our innovation district have reached astronomical levels, but we maintain our selective approach. It's not about the highest bidder, it's about finding partners who understand and contribute to our vision. Martha still serves the best coffee in town, though now she does it in a diner that's been featured in international design magazines. "You know what I love most about what you've done?" she said recently. "You didn't just save our town, you gave it a new purpose while keeping its soul." The ghost town that investors laughed at has become a model for the future of technological innovation, but more importantly, it's proved that progress doesn't have to erase history, it can build upon it, creating something richer and more valuable than either the past or future alone could provide. As the sun sets behind the mountains, casting long shadows across our blend of old and new, I think about the message Silver Peak sends to the world. Sometimes the best innovations don't come from destroying the old to build the new, but from finding ways to let them strengthen each other.
My name is Michelle. Growing up, the difference between my twin sister Linda and me was like night and day. She was the golden girl, and I was not. Our dad, a strict university professor, was always buried in books and lectures, while our mom was the perfect housewife, focused on home and family, urging us to follow her example. From as early as I can remember, being at home felt like sitting through a never-ending critique session. My parents had a plan for the perfect family, and it did not include a daughter who wore band t-shirts and liked to keep to herself. "Michelle, why can't you be more like your sister?" was my mom's favorite line, usually directed at me when I showed up at breakfast with my headphones on, trying to shut out the world. Linda, on the other hand, basked in the glow of approval. "I just don't get why it's so hard for you to put on a nice dress and smile more," she'd say, flipping her perfect hair over her shoulder. It felt like she was from a different planet. One particularly tough Saturday, as our family got ready for one of Dad's faculty parties, a total bore, but a mandatory event for us, I decided to rebel in the smallest way I knew how. I put on my darkest eyeliner and a pair of boots that definitely did not meet the acceptable standard. "You're not going out like that, are you?" Mom caught me on the stairs, her eyes glaring at my boots as if they were dirty. I shrugged my usual defense. "Don't see why not." She sighed, that long, drawn-out kind that said I was the biggest disappointment in her perfectly organized world. "Please, Michelle, just this once, can't you try to fit in?" "What for? So you can pretend we're the perfect family?" I shot back, tired of the same old argument. "It's not about pretending. It's about showing respect for your father," she argued, her voice taking on that sharp tone that meant business. Linda, overhearing the exchange, came trotting down the hallway, her heels clicking on the hardwood floor like a judge approaching the bench. "Mom's right, Amy. It's not that hard to look decent. Why do you always have to make things difficult?" "I don't want to be a clone of you, Linda," I snapped, feeling my face get hot. I hated these arguments, hated being compared, but more than anything, I hated feeling like the odd one out in my own home. Dad appeared at the bottom of the stairs, his brow furrowed. "Michelle, go change now. We're leaving in 15 minutes, he said firmly. His tone left no room for argument. He didn't yell, he didn't need to. The disappointment in his eyes was enough to send me marching back to my room to swap my boots for plain flats and wipe away half my eyeliner. As we drove to the party, the car was silent except for the classical music Dad insisted on playing because it was calming. I stared out the window, watching the trees blur past. In that moment, I promised myself that someday I'd live a life where no one could tell me what to wear, how to act, or who to be. Someday, I'd be free from these expectations. My room was the only corner of the house where I could pretend I was somewhere else, anywhere else. Unlike the rest of the house, which was filled with my parents' choices, my room was mine. It wasn't much, just 3 walls covered in sketches and music posters, but it was my escape from the reality of my family's expectations. One evening, as I was trying to lose myself in a playlist of my favorite bands, Dad knocked and marched into my room, his face set in a familiar frown. "Michelle, turn that noise down, and why haven't you studied with Linda today? You know you both have exams coming up," he said, his voice stern. I pulled out one earbud and looked up at him, trying to keep my voice calm. "I've been studying, just not with Linda. I learn better on my own." Dad shook his head, clearly not believing me. "You know the rules. Your sister gets good grades, and you should be doing the same. I don't see why you always have to make things difficult." "It's not about making things difficult," I said, feeling my frustration grow. "I just don't see why I have to do everything Linda's way. Can't I have my own way of studying?" He didn't respond to that, just switched to another complaint. "And those friends of yours, I saw you with them at the cafe yesterday. I don't think they're a good influence. You should be spending time with the daughters of my colleagues. They're more suitable." I felt my temper rising. "Suitable for what? For you?" "Because they talk about economics and pretend to enjoy those boring university gatherings." Before he could answer, Mom appeared at the doorway, her voice sharp. "Michelle, your father is right. Those girls are from good families. They know how to behave. They're the kind of friends you should want." I stood up, facing both of them. What if I don't want friends who are picked for me? What if I want to choose my own friends, choose what I study, or even decide what I want to be? "That's enough, Michelle," Mom said firmly. "You know your future is with the university. Your father has made sure of that. And after you graduate, you'll need to start thinking about settling down. We've already discussed this." Settling down. The words felt like a prison sentence. "You mean thinking about being someone's wife, like Linda? Is that all you think I'm meant for?" Mom's face softened a bit, but her voice stayed firm. "We want what's best for you. Following the path we've set out will give you a good life." "A good life?" I repeated, the irony bitter in my mouth. Is it a good life if it's someone else's idea of good? No one answered. They didn't need to. We all knew there was no point in arguing. They had their plans, and they expected me to follow them, just like Linda. Linda and I were like two sides of the same coin, always together but never on the same page. At the university where Dad taught, the differences between us became even clearer. She was into business management, the golden child always nodding along in lectures and asking smart questions that made the professors smile. Me, I was stuck in the same program, but it felt like wearing the shoe on the wrong foot, awkward, uncomfortable, and just plain wrong. One afternoon, as I was struggling through a pile of textbooks in the library, Linda breezed in, her notes organized, her smile ready. Hey Amy, you coming to the study group tonight? Professor Hall mentioned he might drop by. It could be good for us to show up, she said, her tone light but insistent. I glanced up, feeling the weight of her expectations. No, I don't think so. Those things aren't really my scene, you know. She frowned, putting her books down with a thud that matched her disapproval. It's not about it being your scene, Amy. It's about making the right impressions. You need to start taking this seriously. We're graduating soon. I shrugged and turned back to my notes. I am taking it seriously, just not in a way that makes me unhappy. Why should I pretend? Because, Amy, sometimes you have to play the game to get ahead, she said, waving at her neat textbooks and color-coded notes. It's not about liking it. It's about doing what's necessary. I shook my head and pushed my chair back with a scrape. Well, maybe I'm tired of doing what's necessary according to everyone else. Did you ever think of that? Her voice softened, but her eyes were still firm. Amy, I'm just trying to help you. Dad won't always be around to fix things. What will you do if you keep pushing everyone away? Maybe I'll figure it out on my own. Maybe I don't need to follow Dad's path or yours, I replied, feeling a surge of defiance. Linda sighed, clearly frustrated. You're so stubborn. Just try, okay. For me, if not for yourself, show up tonight and talk to Professor Hall. It won't kill you. I looked at her, really looked, and saw not just my perfect sister, but someone who cared in her own way. Fine, I'll think about it. I conceded, not ready to promise more. Thank you, she said, her smile returning. It's not that bad, you know. You might even like it if you gave it a chance. Doubt it, I muttered, but I knew I had lost this round. For Linda, I'd show up, sit through another boring discussion, and not at the right times. It was just a few hours. How bad could it be? As it turned out, not as bad as I thought. Professor Hall was surprisingly interesting when he wasn't lecturing from a podium. I even asked a question, which earned a shocked but pleased look from Linda. Later, as we walked back to our dorm, Linda nudged me. See, not so terrible, right? That fragile piece didn't last long. In our final year, Linda introduced us to her fiancé, a lawyer 12 years older, already well established and exactly what our parents dreamed of. Mom and Dad were thrilled, praising Linda for making such a smart choice. Then they turned their hopeful eyes on me. Now, Michelle, it's your turn to find someone suitable, Dad said one evening over dinner, his tone implying my time was running out. Mom nodded enthusiastically, already planning out my life as if it were another one of her well-organized projects. Think about your future, dear, someone who can provide for you, who has a good standing. I remember staring at my plate, feeling trapped. Linda's wedding was planned down to the smallest detail by Mom. From the bridesmaids' dresses to the flowers, everything showed off her perfect vision of family prestige. After the wedding, Mom often visited Linda, giving advice and making sure Linda's life went exactly as she had planned. Watching this, I knew one thing for sure. I didn't want my life controlled by someone else. One day, I was walking down the street, lost in thoughts about escaping the life my parents wanted for me, when I heard the deep rumble of a motorcycle. Curiosity made me look. That's when I saw him, Brian, with his leather jacket and carefree smile, pulling up beside me. "You look like you need a ride," he called over the roar of the engine, a playful sparkle in his eyes. I hesitated, looking back toward the path home, then at his outstretched hand. What did I have to lose? "Sure, why not?" I said, my voice a mix of nerves and excitement. Climbing onto the back of his bike, I felt a rush of adrenaline as we sped away. The wind whipped through my hair, and for the first time in a long while, I laughed a real laugh. Brian shouted something about showing me his world, and I held on tighter, not wanting the moment to end. We stopped at a diner popular with bikers. Over burgers and fries, Brian told me about his life as a welder, his love for bikes, and his passion for the open road. It was so different from anything I was used to, raw and real. "Don't you get scared living like this?" I asked, my voice barely rising above the clatter of plates and chatter around us. "Scared? No, it's thrilling. You never know what's around the corner. Isn't that better than having everything planned out for you?" he replied, his eyes lighting up with each word. Over the next few weeks, we met in secret. Each ride on Brian's motorcycle took me further from the life I was supposed to live and closer to the life I wanted. The speed, the adventure, it wasn't just about the thrill. It was about feeling alive, feeling free. One evening, as we watched the sunset from a secluded overlook, Brian turned to me. "Michelle, I don't just ride to escape. I ride to feel alive, to make every moment count. With you, every moment feels like it's worth something." I leaned into him, my heart beating fast. "I've never felt like this before. You make me feel free, Brian." He smiled, pulling me closer. "Then let's not go back to just existing. Let's live." 5 months with Brian felt like a lifetime of moments. I had always dreamed of the day he would propose under the stars, with the gentle rumble of his bike in the background. My heart said yes before my mouth could form the word. It was perfect, except for one big problem: my parents. I was scared to introduce Brian to them. He was everything they disapproved of: his rough edges, his wild spirit, his simple but happy life as a welder. But love gave me courage, and I decided it was time for them to know. The day I brought Brian home, he wore his usual leather vest, red t-shirt, ripped jeans, and a bandana. I loved that about him. He was always himself. As we walked up the driveway, I could already feel the weight of my parents' judgment. When we stepped inside, Mom's face went pale at the sight of Brian, her eyes widening in shock. "What in the world, Michelle?" she gasped, her voice barely a whisper. Dad's reaction was harsher, his words sharp as knives. "Who is this, and why is he dressed like a thug in our house?" I took a deep breath to steady my nerves. "Mom, Dad, this is Brian. He's the man I love. We're getting married." The silence was deafening. Then Dad turned to Brian, his tone full of disdain. "Married? What do you do for a living, young man? What are your qualifications?" Brian, bless him, didn't waver. "I'm a welder. I took some specialized courses after high school. I work hard and make an honest living." The look on my parents' faces was a mix of horror and disbelief. Mom looked like she might faint. "A welder, Michelle? You can't be serious." Dad's voice rose, anger flaring. "You expect us to bless this, to throw away your future for a welder?" I felt my resolve harden. "Yes, because he makes me happy. Isn't that what should matter?" "But the life you'll lead," Mom started, her voice trembling. "It will be the life I choose," I shot back, my own voice gaining strength. Dad shook his head, his decision clear. "We cannot and will not support this. If you choose him, don't expect to be a part of this family." The finality in his tone broke my heart, but not my decision. Brian squeezed my hand, giving me the strength to face them. "Then I choose Brian. I choose us. I choose my happiness." Mom's eyes filled with tears, and Dad's jaw clenched tight. "If you walk out with him, don't bother coming back," Dad said, his voice cold. Walking away from my parents' house with Brian, my heart was a mess of emotions: pain, relief, excitement, and fear all mixed into one. The night air felt different, like each breath was a new beginning. I took a step further into a new life. We rode in silence for a while, the steady roar of the motorcycle beneath us. When we finally stopped at a small diner on the edge of town, Brian turned to me with a serious look. "Are you sure about this, Michelle? I mean, really sure? There's no going back after tonight," he said, his eyes searching mine for any sign of doubt. I nodded, squeezing his hand tightly. "I've never been more sure of anything. Being with you feels right. It feels like what I'm meant to do." He smiled that reckless, charming smile that had won me over the first day we met. "All right then, let's do it. Let's start our life together." Inside the diner, we found a quiet booth in the corner. The waitress brought us 2 coffees without asking, and we sat there planning our next steps. "So what's first?" I asked, stirring cream into my coffee and watching it swirl. "We'll need to find a place to stay, at least for a while, and maybe look for jobs. I have some buddies who can help us get started," Brian replied, sounding practical but hopeful. "It's going to be tough, isn't it?" I said, more as a statement than a question. The reality of what we were doing was starting to sink in. Brian reached across the table and covered my hand with his. "It might be, but we'll handle it together. Tough is nothing new for either of us, right?" I couldn't help but laugh a short, genuine burst of amusement. Right, together. We spent hours in that diner talking and planning. Every so often, Brian would mention an idea that sounded so wild and free that it made my heart jump. "And maybe one day, we'll save enough to take that road trip across the country. Just you, me, and the open road." "I like that," I said, allowing myself to dream bigger than I ever had. Riding back into the city, we began our search. The next few weeks were a blur of activity. We found a small apartment on the edge of town. It wasn't fancy, but it was ours. Brian found work at a local garage, and I picked up shifts at a nearby diner. Life was hard, but it was ours. We made do with what we had, and every night when we came home to each other, it felt like we had everything. Months later, we decided it was time to make it official and got married in a small, intimate ceremony. I held onto a small hope that my family would show up, that they would see how happy I was and let go of their prejudices. But the chairs we had reserved for them stayed empty, and no congratulatory messages came. Despite the sting of their absence, the day was perfect because it was ours. Over time, I grew very close to Brian's mom. She welcomed me with open arms, calling me her daughter and filling in the gaps left by my own family. Her warmth and acceptance helped heal some of the wounds left by my parents' rejection. Things finally started looking up for Brian and me. After he completed some additional training and became a certified underwater welder, his income shot up to $230,000 a year. That change made a huge difference. We managed to buy a townhouse in a nice area, the kind of place I had always dreamed about but never thought I'd actually live in. I started working as a dispatcher in Brian's company. It wasn't just a job. It felt like I was part of something important, supporting the man I loved and building our future together. On weekends, we escaped the city on his bike, roaring through winding roads and taking in the breathtaking views of nature. Those moments, with the wind in my hair and Brian's warmth against my back, were pure bliss. Living nearby, my mother-in-law became a frequent visitor. One afternoon, while Brian was tinkering in the garage and I was making coffee, she arrived looking a bit troubled. "There's been some bad news," she said as she settled down at the kitchen table. "Something about a professor at the university involved in a harassment scandal." My heart skipped a beat. "Did they say who it was?" I tried to keep my voice steady, dreading the answer. She shook her head. "No, they didn't mention a name on the radio, but you know how these things go. It's probably all over the TV by now." Nodding, I turned on the television and tuned into the news. Sure enough, there was a report on the scandal. As I had feared, my father's face appeared on the screen. The anchor detailed the accusations against him and I felt a cold wave of disbelief wash over me. Turning off the TV, I sat down heavily, trying to process the news. Brian came in, wiping his hands on a rag, and saw my face. "What's wrong, babe?" he asked, his brow furrowed in concern. I swallowed hard, my voice barely a whisper. "It's my dad. He's been accused of harassing a student." Brian's expression grew serious for a moment before he came over and took my hand. "I'm sorry, Michelle. That's tough news. How do you want to handle this?" I shook my head, feeling unsure about everything. "I don't know. I mean, what can I even do? We're not close anymore." He squeezed my hand, showing he understood. "Whatever you need, I'm here for you. We don't have to figure it all out right now." I decided to wait and see how things unfolded before making any moves. Whatever decision I made, I knew Brian would be by my side, and that gave me the strength to face whatever came next. Life had been peaceful until that unexpected afternoon at work when a familiar car pulled into the parking lot. I hadn't seen my parents in a long time, and the sight of them stirred up a mix of emotions I thought I had put to rest. They both looked dramatically different. The scandal had taken its toll. Mom had lost a lot of weight and looked much older, while Dad seemed broken, a shadow of the stern man he once was. My mother saw me and rushed over, arms open as if nothing had happened, as if years of distance and disapproval could be erased in an instant. But I couldn't embrace her, not now. Instead, I stepped back and took Brian's hand, drawing strength from his presence. "Michelle, it was so hard to find you," Mom said, her voice cracking with emotion. Dad, always the blunt one, got straight to the point. His voice was harsh and bitter. "I was accused unfairly, you know. I went to your sister's husband for help, but that leech wanted a fortune. Your sister sided with him, and now they've kicked us out. We need your help." I stared at them, disbelief and anger swirling inside me. "Help? After all these years, you show up and demand help." "We have nowhere else to go," Mom said desperately. "They've disowned us too. We thought maybe we could stay with you." I almost laughed at the absurdity. "Stay with me? After you disowned me, you made it clear I wasn't your daughter anymore." Dad's face turned red, his old temper flaring up. "You owe us, Michelle, after all we've done for you." "That's where you're wrong," I replied, feeling a newfound resolve. I cut them off, feeling Brian squeeze my hand for support. "I don't owe you anything. You threw me out because I chose my happiness over your demands. And now you want to just move in and act like we're a family again?" The situation was spiraling out of control, and I could see people watching, a small crowd beginning to form. Mom started to cry, her sobs loud and drawing even more attention. "You're being ungrateful after everything we've done for you," she accused through her tears. I took a deep breath, my decision clear. "No, Mom, I'm not ungrateful. I'm free and happy. You made your choices, and now you have to live with them." As we walked away, I heard my dad yelling, but Brian leaned over and quietly told the security team, "Don't let them come here again." The following months flew by, filled with love and peace. We welcomed a son, a new beginning for our growing family. My parents never came back. That day in the parking lot was the last time I saw them. While part of me grieved for what could have been, I knew I had made the right choice for myself and for my family. Hey, I had this idea about how sad and unlucky my sister is. I've got the perfect plan. What kind of plan? Just watch closely. Mary put on a fancy wedding dress, the kind you would wear to a wedding. She walked over to the microphone. When she got it, she turned to the guests and said confidently, "Would anyone like to take my sister off our hands? She's not very educated and she's getting old, isn't she?" After she said this, Mary looked at her sister with a smug, mean smile, but she didn't realize how rude her actions were. The mood in the room changed quickly. People started whispering, and some guests gave Mary cold looks. Mary didn't notice and grabbed the microphone again. "Come on, sister, you need to sell yourself more. There are plenty of handsome doctors here. You really don't understand what you've done, do you? In the next moment, something major and unexpected happened. My name is Amy Schumer, a plain 31-year-old working woman. I don't have any outstanding features except for one unusual fact. After middle school, I pursued a career in law and became a lawyer. I have a sister named Mary who is 3 years younger than me. She's charming and sociable, so our family always treated her specially. I am not noticeable in appearance, just plain and average in style. I'm not especially charming, so my family and relatives never cherished me much. I hardly felt any affection and was treated coldly at home. I couldn't compete with Mary's natural charm, and she got all of our parents' love. All I received were harsh looks. I worked as hard as I could. I tried my best in my studies, earning good grades, hoping to get some attention from my family. But I could never outshine Mary. Eventually, I got tired of trying to win their love and decided to focus on something else. I gave up on being loved and put all my effort into studying. I promised myself that I would find my worth through my knowledge. Studying hard gave me confidence, and my efforts led to good results. I hoped that my success in school would one day earn me a word of praise from my parents. Holding on to this faint hope, I stayed up late every night, studying. Throughout middle school, I was always at the top of my class and did better than other students in every test. But even then, my parents never praised me. Instead, they often criticized my grades. It's not just about being at the top. You need to get nearly perfect scores in every subject. Yes, even if you score 98% in science, it's not perfect. But this recent exam was really difficult. I would try to explain. Excuses again. Your insufficient efforts are why you end up with such results, my mother would say sharply. Her voice was as cold as ice. Are you intending to flaunt those less than perfect grades? All I could do was apologize. Yes, I'm sorry, I murmured softly. No matter how much time and effort I invested, my results never matched my parents' idea of perfect. They never acknowledged my efforts. Any score less than 101% was just a reason for them to scold me. But more than my parents' coldness, my sister Mary's seemingly innocent words hurt more. Oh, sister, you're not getting lectured again, are you? She would come into my room without permission and smirk at my report card. Good grades and still scolded. That's sad. I get praise for barely passing. Did you come here just to say that? I asked, feeling frustrated. I was worried maybe you were down again, but I didn't expect such a cold reception, Mary said, pretending to be concerned. If you were really worried, you wouldn't speak to me like that, I replied, trying to keep calm. See, that's your problem. You're always like this, so standoffish. That's why Mom and Dad don't show you love, Mary said, her gaze cold as ice. She looked down on me with unmistakable contempt. For a brief moment, her attitude was clear even as she left the room. After she was gone, I could hear her cheerful laughter with our parents from the living room. I should have been used to this by now, but the sadness overwhelmed me and tears ran down my cheeks. I had told myself many times that I didn't need my parents' approval and that Mary's words wouldn't affect me. Despite that, my emotions betrayed me, and I cried. In my hand was the crumpled report card, wrinkled from my tight grip. I resolved once again to stand on my own and escape from this stifling family environment. I decided that doing well in my studies and improving my abilities was the key to that escape. From that moment, I threw myself into my studies with even more determination. One day, as the autumn breeze swept through the classroom windows, I received an unexpected announcement from my father. Amy, you will not go to high school. You will start looking for a job immediately, he stated coldly. I was at a loss for words, unable to hide my confusion. Why would you say something like that? I asked with a blank expression. Further investment in you is unnecessary. If you want to go to high school, pay for it with your own earnings. If that's impossible, then you have no choice but to give up. But I'm still in middle school. Work opportunities are limited for me. How am I supposed to? My protest fell on deaf ears. Then you must accept this. After discussing it with your mother, we've decided to focus our finances on Mary. We can't afford to spend more on you, he declared firmly. That's not fair, I screamed internally, but my father's decision was final. His abrupt words seemed to drain all the color from the world around me, painting everything in shades of gray. My mother and sister looked at me with unhidden smiles, enjoying my misery. I understand much more now. There were options like finding schools with tuition waivers or scholarships. However, back then, without knowing how to access that information, I was simply devastated by the closure of my path to further education. Since that day, my passion for learning faded quickly. The praises from my homeroom teacher, who had always admired my grades, felt hollow, and the lack of interest in education at home made my chances of advancing to higher education seem even more hopeless. I started the next stage of my life by working at a local factory right after graduation. Since I wasn't old enough to live on my own, I stayed with my family until I turned 19. I worked as hard as I could, and most of my salary went to the household. I saved the little money I kept for myself for the future. Those tough days felt like crawling through an endless tunnel. On my 19th birthday, I finally left home. I wrote a single letter for my family and walked away from the place that was now just a memory. My family's reaction was as if I had never existed, complete silence, without a single phone call or letter. At first, living apart from my family caused me heartache, and the loneliness cast a shadow over my days. However, as time passed, the loneliness eased with the busyness of work. After moving out and starting an independent life, the stress I had felt at home disappeared, and I began to experience a mental spaciousness I had never felt before. This newfound peace of mind reignited my enthusiasm. I regained my passion for learning and decided to start studying again. I began with the basics, reviewing them diligently. The joy of learning filled my heart once more. Soon I started to study high school textbooks and began reading extensively. During my reading journey, I became fascinated by books on law, which sparked a deep interest in the legal profession. Despite only having a junior high education, I learned about the preliminary examination system, which allowed someone like me to take the bar exam. With this new information, my dedication to studying intensified. I used every possible moment to study, even during short breaks at work. I memorized legal terms during lunch, always preparing for the bar exam. The people at my workplace, mostly older than me, saw my earnest efforts and supported me. At the age of 24, I passed the bar exam. After passing the exam, I left my long-term job at the factory and secured a position at a top law firm. After about 5 years of training, I set out on my own and opened my law practice. Now, I happily work as a legal consultant for a hospital. Sometimes I wonder what would happen if I told my parents about becoming a lawyer. I think about how they might react and if I could finally meet their expectations. However, I haven't shared anything with them, and deep down, I believe I won't reach out to them. An unexpected reunion with my family came sooner than I thought. One evening, after finishing work, I found a message on my phone from my younger sister Mary. She was getting married. Mary is getting married, I murmured to myself. My sister, now 29, was engaged to a doctor, and her wedding was next month. They wanted me to attend. Despite the long estrangement from Mary and my parents, I couldn't ignore this significant event, so I replied that I would attend. Mary quickly responded with the exact date and location of the ceremony. The message ended with, "Don't forget the wedding gift," which made me smile wryly. Perhaps Mary was more interested in the gift than in welcoming me. I decided to use the wedding as a chance to reunite with the family, and then part ways again. On the day of Mary's wedding, I put on a carefully selected blue dress and headed to the venue. After completing the entrance formalities, I took my seat in the family area where my father and mother were already seated. "You have some nerve showing up here," You must be doing well for yourself with the meager earnings from the factory, my father said coldly. Indeed, you're right. Introducing someone like her as family does not do us any credit as parents, my mother added with disdain. Mary shouldn't have invited someone like you, my father continued. I told them exactly that, but they insisted on getting the celebration money anyway, my mother said quietly, even though I was right there. They carried on this conversation without any hesitation. This was the reality I faced. I had a faint hope that sharing my side might bridge the gap between us, but it was quickly shattered. Both my father and mother seemed to completely avoid talking to me. In the silence, I glanced around the venue and noticed some familiar faces among the groom's side. Haven't I seen that person somewhere before? I thought to myself, feeling a sense of déjà vu. As I traced my uncertain memory, I looked up the groom's name and my suspicion turned into conviction. The connection I had anticipated became clear. I couldn't entirely hide my faint surprise. Such a coincidence, almost like a twist of fate, I marveled. However, I decided to keep my emotions in check and spend the day quietly. As the ceremony proceeded, the bride and groom made a glamorous entrance. Guests spoke warm words and gave entertaining performances that softened the atmosphere. As time passed, the banquet gradually shifted to dinner and then to photo sessions. Throughout this time, my parents got up without acknowledging me and moved toward the front where the bride and groom awaited. Mary, as if drawn by a magnet, clung close to the bride and groom, smiling happily in every photograph. Pretending not to be affected by the scene unfolding before me, I focused silently on the meal in front of me. Unexpectedly, my sister Mary approached me. She came closer with a smile, but her eyes had a spark of something more than excitement to see her sister after so many years. Big sis, it's been such a long time, hasn't it? Are you happy to spend time together like this? She asked slightly. I nodded quietly and said, Yes, the banquet food is really wonderful. With a sarcastic smile, Mary continued, You can't get such luxurious food at the factory you work at, can you? You should be grateful for this opportunity. Something inside me felt like it was being torn apart, but I didn't show it on my face. Mary's words became sharper, tauntingly piercing me. Oh dear, did I upset you? I'm sorry, but it's natural for you to be envious, isn't it? Your little sister marrying a doctor and all. Mary said the words I'm sorry flippantly, as if they were meaningless. I kept my expression unchanged and quietly waited for my next move. At that moment, Mary whispered in my ear, Big sis, because I feel sorry for you, I've come up with a great idea. Despite trying to stay calm, I asked with suspicion, A great idea. What is it? Mary, looking satisfied, said, You'll see. Just watch closely. Wearing her elegant wedding dress, Mary gathered everyone's attention. She took a microphone from the staff and suddenly announced loudly to the guests, Ladies and gentlemen, you may not be aware, but my sister is here. She may not have the highest education or be the youngest, but if there is anyone kind-hearted enough, could you please take her under your wing? My face turned red. What are you saying, Mary? I exclaimed. Mary continued even louder. Although she doesn't earn much and leads a modest life, is there someone here who can brighten my sister's future? As everyone focused on me, Mary seemed to enjoy my discomfort with a smug smile. At that moment, a shocking scene unfolded. Mary's rude behavior escalated, and even our normally gentle parents joined in. Please treat her kindly, my parents added. This was the last straw for me. Rage swirled within me. To ridicule someone so much at a happy event, how far would they go? I couldn't believe it. But now it was time for them to face reality. As the atmosphere shifted and murmurs spread through the venue, Mary, unaware she was the center of attention, cheerfully called out, Amy, look, there are so many doctors here. It's your chance. I stayed silent but conveyed my strong will through my somber gaze. This is the end for you. Confused, Mary responded, Eh? I continued more calmly. You'll understand soon just how terrible your actions have been." Just as Mary tried to make an excuse, the groom suddenly raised his voice. "Wait, please. Why are you leaving your seats?" The venue was riveted by his voice. Looking toward the groom, it was clear all his colleagues from work were standing up, heading for the exit. Even as the groom tried to stop them, a dignified man, who appeared to be the hospital director, spoke to the groom with determination. "The recent remarks of the bride were so unpleasant that I'm in disbelief. I apologize, but we can no longer stay here. We will take our leave now," the hospital director said. The groom hurried to stop him, offering to take responsibility for Mary's words and actions. "Please wait. I admit her words were inappropriate. I'll speak to her directly and ensure she changes her behavior." However, the hospital director pointed out the gravity of the issue and revealed something the groom didn't know. "The problem isn't just that. Do you not know what kind of person her sister is?" The groom, confused, admitted, "No, I only met her sister for the first time today. All I've heard is that she worked in a factory after graduating from middle school." The hospital director couldn't hide his irritation. "Don't be ridiculous. Her sister is a respected lawyer and serves as the legal advisor to our hospital." The groom was shocked to learn this, indicating he had no idea I was the hospital's legal advisor. Mary and my parents were also speechless. I was the legal advisor of the hospital where Mary's fiancé worked. I had seen him several times at hospital events, which is why he looked familiar. The other guests probably realized this too. Mary's inappropriate comments only made things worse, and that's why the hospital director was so outraged. Although the groom himself had no direct relation to me, the hospital director and staff valued the legal advisor highly. The groom's face turned red, and he stepped toward Mary, raising his voice. "What on earth is this? Because of your carelessness, my reputation is now tarnished." Mary stumbled over her words, then defended herself like a bewildered child. "It's not like that. I truly had no idea my sister was in such a prestigious position." Growing more indignant, the groom continued to scold Mary. "Ignorance is no excuse. How can you speak so lightly and disrespectfully of your own sister? Your behavior is disgraceful. You've truly lost sight of what's valuable." Mary, desperately trying to explain, pleaded, "Wait a minute, listen, I have a good reason." However, the groom, without giving her a chance to explain, declared decisively, "The marriage is off. I have no interest in hearing your excuses. Our engagement ends here." Shocked by his words, Mary collapsed on the spot, her complexion turning deathly pale. In a fit of anger, the groom stormed out of the wedding hall along with the other guests. As I was about to leave, I heard a desperate cry from my sister behind me. "Please help me, Amy." Without being swayed by her cries, I confronted her with a stern tone. "Help you? Why should I? The situation you're in is because of your own actions. Making jokes at others' expense and then playing the victim is pathetic." Mary, filled with confusion and anxiety, pleaded, "Why are you using such harsh words? If I had known about your success as a lawyer." With a quiet yet firm attitude, I responded, "Why should I need to inform someone who has never contacted me about my profession? In fact, I was planning to end our relationship after this wedding. But now, seeing your unfortunate end, I am somewhat satisfied. You must be disappointed that your engagement to a doctor has been called off. Well, you'd better work hard to find your next prospect." With these words, I left the venue with dignity. From afar, I could hear the critical voices of my parents and other guests. Everything proceeded as expected, and Mary's marriage was no more. My parents, who had thought a secure future was assured through Mary's marriage to a doctor, expressed their anger toward her for the first time. Unable to withstand their anger, Mary sought help with a broken heart, but I ignored her pleas. I never answered her calls despite repeated attempts and cut off all contact with the family. I heard that Mary had quit her job and was now without employment, estranged from our parents, and spending her days shut in at home. As for me, I am very happy with both my work and private life, living peacefully without any big problems. Although my bond with my family hasn't been smooth, I am lucky to have a lot of support from people in my professional and daily life. This good environment isn't by chance, but because of my long-term hard work and effort. There were times when I faced tough challenges, but overcoming them made me who I am today. Looking back on my past struggles, I see their value. Now, I hope to keep living a fulfilling life at my own pace, setting realistic goals and keeping stress low. Hello everyone, my name is Julie, and I'd like to share my story with you. My mother-in-law, Kelly, wasn't always the vain and shallow woman she is today. This transformation in her personality happened later in life, or at least that's what my husband, James, believes. Growing up, James and Kelly lived a modest life. They didn't have much, but they made do with what they had. When James was just 5 years old, his father passed away, leaving Kelly to take on the role of the family's breadwinner. She worked hard to provide for them, and they led a simple yet content life until James graduated from college and landed a great job. James is an extraordinary man, kind, intelligent, and humble. He earned a full scholarship to medical school and went on to become a doctor. Despite all his success, James has never let it get to his head. However, things began to change for Kelly as she started seeking a more luxurious lifestyle. I should mention that I don't have a job, and there are personal reasons for that, which I'll discuss later. But just because I'm not employed doesn't mean I'm poor or dependent on others. Unfortunately, when Kelly and I first met, she misjudged me. Perhaps it was the way I dressed or carried myself, but something about me seemed to rub her the wrong way. On our first meeting, Kelly turned to James and said, "Is this the girl you've been talking about? She's so plain and average. Why would you choose someone like her? Does she even have a job?" My name is Julie, and yes, I don't have a job, but that doesn't define my worth. Kelly, however, quickly labeled me as a gold digger and a parasite, assuming I was only with James for his money. She made harsh and unfounded judgments about my character. James stood by me and defended me, but the argument with Kelly quickly escalated, forcing us to leave. On the drive home, James apologized for his mother's behavior, admitting that she had crossed a line. He tried to comfort me, saying his mom wasn't the same person she used to be and asking me not to take her words to heart. Despite his reassurance, I couldn't shake the feeling that being around Kelly would be difficult. After all, she's the only parent James has left. I decided to step back and give Kelly some space. Cutting her off completely isn't an option, especially since we don't have much extended family. But I knew that finding a way to coexist with her would be a challenge I had to face. "I won't force you to be friends with her," James said, "but can you at least try to be civil when you're around her?" "I could be respectful towards your mom, James, but I doubt she'll do the same for me," I replied, feeling a mix of frustration and concern. "Don't worry, Julie," he reassured me. "I'll make sure she doesn't cross the line. If things get out of hand, we can talk about reducing contact. I love my mom, but I love you too, and I won't let her harass you for no reason." Despite James's assurances, I still felt uneasy about my relationship with Kelly. Even though James promised to stand up for me, I couldn't shake the feeling that things wouldn't be so simple. James and I got married 2 years after we started dating. Due to financial constraints, we opted for a small court wedding. At the time, James was sending a significant amount of money to Kelly every month, claiming it was for emergencies. Even after our marriage, he continued to send her money, which strained our finances. I didn't object because I believed he had the right to support his mom, but it wasn't long before Kelly became a real problem in our lives. She often spoke ill of me, gossiping with her friends and spreading rumors that I was a gold digger. At first, I tried to ignore it, but as the rumors began to affect my reputation, it became harder to brush off. Despite James's efforts to defend me, Kelly never treated me kindly. She seemed convinced that I wasn't good enough for her son. Then, one day, James came to me with surprising news. "My mom wants to invite you to a small party she's hosting," he said. I was immediately skeptical. "Why would she invite me when she clearly dislikes me?" I asked, not hiding my doubts. James explained, "She promised me she's trying to improve and wants you to be there." I know it seems odd, especially with her recent financial struggles, but she assured me she managed somehow. Despite my concerns, I agreed to attend the party. James was hopeful that his mom was making an effort, and I wanted to keep an open mind. I truly wanted us to mend our relationship and maybe even become friends, though I had serious doubts about whether Kelly would ever see me as more than an obstacle in her son's life. The next day, Kelly texted me, and I'd assumed it was to formally invite me to the party. However, her message took an unexpected turn. She started by talking about the party, which she planned to host at a 5-star hotel that everyone had been raving about. She seemed thrilled, promising her friends a fantastic time and planning to invite around 21 people. Curious about the details, I asked Kelly if I was invited to the party, especially since James had assured me that I was welcome. To my surprise, Kelly's response was laced with arrogance and disdain. She made it very clear that I was not invited, emphasizing how exclusive the event was due to her wealth, family status, and the supposed high-class nature of her friends. I was shocked and confused. James had genuinely believed that Kelly intended to invite me, and now I was faced with this unexpected coldness. When I mentioned my assumption that I was invited, Kelly responded with condescending remarks, implying that I wouldn't understand the complexities of planning such an event. Despite feeling hurt, I decided to maintain my dignity. I calmly acknowledged her message and made it clear that I wouldn't attend if I wasn't wanted. Kelly reiterated her stance, once again highlighting her class and status. It took all my strength to resist the urge to respond with anger. Disappointed and hurt, I chose not to share this incident with James. Instead, I decided to quietly wait for the day of the party. As the day of the party approached, Kelly, oblivious to the emotional impact of her actions, sent me a picture. It showed her and her friends dressed in designer outfits, flaunting their wealth and status on social media. I chose not to respond, instead focusing on my work and waiting patiently for what would happen next. After about 5 hours, I received a call from my dad. Here's a little confession. My dad owns the very hotel where Kelly was hosting her party. Unbeknownst to Kelly, 5 years ago, I inherited a substantial amount of money from my grandfather, which I wisely invested in my dad's business. As a result, I now receive a share of the profits from the hotel and other family-owned ventures. Despite coming from a well-off family, I've always preferred to keep this low-key, which is why Kelly had no idea about my background or the high cost of the 5-star hotel she had chosen for her party. During the party, Kelly and her friends ordered freely without bothering to check the menu or the prices, resulting in a hefty $5,000 bill. This turn of events presented the perfect opportunity for a bit of justice. My dad called to inform me that Kelly was at the hotel, shocked by the $5,000 bill she had amassed. She was now pleading for a 60% discount, claiming she was short on cash. What made the situation even more satisfying was that Kelly and her friends had been rude and entitled throughout the event, upsetting the hotel staff. As expected, I shared my frustration with my dad, recounting how Kelly had boasted about her party just to mock me for not being invited. The irony wasn't lost on me here. She was flaunting a party she couldn't even afford. My dad understood my frustration and also mentioned how difficult Kelly and her friends had made things for his staff with their rude behavior. Seeing a chance for some poetic justice, I suggested a little revenge. I proposed that Kelly and her friends should be made to wash the dishes, clean the entire kitchen, and mop the floors as a consequence of their insulting behavior. I wanted to make sure that everyone who had mistreated the staff would face the same consequences. and if Kelly tried to pull any tricks, my dad could always call the cops on her. My dad laughed at the idea and gave it a big thumbs up. He even offered to send me pictures of the whole event. It seemed like the perfect opportunity to turn the tables on Kelly and teach her a lesson about humility and respect. Just the thought of it brought a sense of satisfaction, knowing she would finally face the consequences of her actions. A little over an hour later, my dad sent me pictures of Kelly and her friends washing dishes and scrubbing the floors at our restaurant. The images were priceless. My dad also shared a funny twist in the story. When Kelly spotted him at the restaurant, she looked relieved, thinking she was about to be rescued. She confidently told him that she knew the owner and they would be able to get out of the situation. But to her shock, my dad instructed her to start cleaning the restaurant. Kelly was stunned and tried to protest, but my dad quickly reminded her that since she didn't consider me family, he didn't consider her family either. It was a hilarious turn of events, and while I wish I could have been there to see it in person, the pictures were more than enough to make my day. A little while later, James came home looking visibly upset. I could tell that Kelly had already contacted him and likely twisted the story to suit her narrative. As he approached me, he immediately questioned what he had heard something about my dad making his mom wash dishes at the restaurant. I calmly explained the situation to James, letting him know that what happened was standard practice for us in such scenarios. Kelly had gone to our family's restaurant, racked up a $5,000 bill, and then claimed she only had $2,500 to pay. On top of that, she had harassed the staff, and her entire party had been a nightmare to deal with. Given the circumstances, I believed the consequences were more than fair. James seemed surprised by this and asked who Kelly had taken with her and what they had ordered. I informed him that she had taken 21 people and they had ordered a lot, especially the most expensive items on the menu. He expressed disbelief, saying that Kelly had told him she was only taking 5 people and had even invited me, but I had declined. I quickly clarified that things hadn't happened that way at all and showed him the text messages Kelly had sent me. James, wanting to fully understand the situation, asked to see the bills and the texts. I handed him my phone so he could read through everything, and my dad also sent him copies of the bills. To further illustrate what had gone on, I showed him pictures of the extravagant party Kelly had thrown. As James looked through the evidence, his anger grew. He immediately called Kelly to confront her, asking why she hadn't told him the full story. Kelly tried to downplay the situation, claiming she had only mentioned being short on cash and accused me of twisting the story to sabotage her. James wasn't having any of it. He pointed out that not only had she declined my invitation, but she had also insulted me by saying I wasn't classy enough for her. Kelly attempted to brush it off as a harmless joke, but James wasn't buying it. He pressed her on why she would spend thousands of dollars on a lavish party with friends while simultaneously disrespecting his wife. Kelly was left stumbling over her words, trying to justify her actions, but James made it clear that he was disappointed and shocked by her behavior. He couldn't believe she had spent $5,000 on food and drinks while treating me with such disdain. "I made a mistake by giving you money whenever you asked for it, Mom," James said firmly. "But guess what? I'm not giving you any more money ever again." Kelly, taken aback, responded, "But James, you've been so supportive for so long. You can't just stop now. It was a one-time mistake. Why are you overreacting?" "No, Mom, I'm not overreacting," James replied, his voice steady. "This isn't a one-time mistake. If you can't even consider my wife as family, I don't want anything to do with you. I kept hoping you'd change your mind, but you never did. I'm not going to pay you just so you can insult my wife and call her classless, especially when she has sacrificed so much to support you. This ends now." With that, James ended the call and blocked Kelly's number. He turned to me with deep regret in his eyes and apologized profusely for getting angry at me without knowing the full story. I forgave him because, in the end, he stood up for me when it really mattered. We had a serious discussion about Kelly and agreed that she would no longer be a part of our lives, at least for the time being. Although James is now a wealthy man, he understands the importance of staying humble. He found Kelly's behavior completely unacceptable, especially since it was directed towards me. I wholeheartedly agreed it was unfair, and I was ready to remove her from our lives for good. In the days that followed, Kelly's desperation grew. She realized that her own actions might have permanently damaged her relationship with her son, sending her into a state of panic. She started showing up at our house, demanding to speak with James. Each time she was turned away at the door, her demands turned into pleas and eventually into outright begging. Despite having a job, Kelly's income wasn't enough to support the high-end lifestyle she had become accustomed to over the years. Now, with James cutting her off financially, she found herself struggling. Meanwhile, instead of continuing to support Kelly, James chose to invest some of his funds into my dad's business, helping him open new hotels and restaurants in the neighborhood. Kelly was left to face the consequences of her actions, realizing too late that her behavior had cost her more than just money, it had cost her the relationship with her son. We do have plans to expand our hotel business into bigger cities, but we'll have to take things one step at a time and see what the future holds. There's a lot to consider when making such a big move, and we want to make sure everything is done right. Since James stopped sending money to Kelly, her life has taken a significant turn. She was used to living a much more comfortable and extravagant lifestyle, but now things have changed dramatically for her. Without the financial support from James, Kelly found it increasingly difficult to maintain her rented condo. The bills started piling up, and she quickly realized that her own income wasn't enough to cover the high costs she was used to. After struggling to make ends meet, she finally decided to end her lease and move into a much smaller one-bedroom apartment. Now, after paying all her bills, she barely has any money left for anything extra. The luxuries she once took for granted are no longer within her reach. We know all of this because Kelly makes sure to keep us informed through emails, of course. She still tries to downplay her past behavior, acting as though we're the ones overreacting and that she's done nothing wrong. But the reality is clear. Her actions have led to this situation, and as a result, she'll be out of our lives for the foreseeable future. Just a month ago, I discovered that I'm pregnant and James and I couldn't be happier. This news has brought so much joy into our lives, and we're completely focused on preparing for the arrival of our little one. We've been busy planning every detail, from setting up the nursery to making sure we have everything we need for when the baby comes. It's an exciting and busy time, but we wouldn't have it any other way. Honestly, I'm relieved that our child won't be exposed to the kind of negativity and shallowness that Kelly represents. As we prepare to welcome our baby into the world, I'm determined to protect our child from any harmful influences, especially from someone who has shown such little regard for others. If the time ever comes when Kelly tries to be a part of our child's life, I'll make sure she doesn't have the opportunity to fill our child's head with any nonsense or negativity. For now, we're focusing on being the best parents we can be and ensuring that our child is born into a loving and supportive environment. We're hoping for a healthy, happy baby, and we're grateful for all the blessings we've received. As we embark on this new chapter in our lives, we kindly ask for your well wishes and support as we prepare to welcome our little one into the world. It's nice to think she won't be around for a while. My youngest brother was getting married, and I was busy getting ready for an overnight stay. I even took paid time off from work to leave our home, where I live with my in-laws. It's been a while since I did that. I was packing my overnight bag for the celebration when I heard my mother-in-law's voice behind me. "Never come back, and while you're at it, why don't you just get a divorce and leave?" she said. "Sure, as you wish. I responded calmly and accepted her spite with a quiet smile. Leaving her sneering taunts behind, I stepped out of the house. Before I got too far, I said goodbye to our home. Thank you for everything. It's been a long time. I don't remember ever being looked after by my mother-in-law, but somehow I felt very lighthearted. I pulled along a slightly oversized suitcase, rushing to where my beloved family awaited. I'll be staying at the hotel for 3 nights and 4 days. What comes after that remains a secret. My mother-in-law doesn't know that I will never return as a resident of this house. I'm Michelle Williams, a 53-year-old part-timer. While working at an office, I also manage our busy household. My husband Daniel and I are the same age, and our marriage has lasted over 31 years. It was an arranged meeting recommended by an acquaintance, but we're a couple who share similar values and get along well. The only loneliness comes from Daniel's job as a sailor. He works for a shipping company and can be away from home for over a year at times. Still, our relationship is good, and we are blessed with a son. We live in a house with my in-laws until recently. I was mainly responsible for taking care of my husband's grandmother, who lived with us. I used my income to hire a caregiver during the day. After that, I took care of her mostly by myself. This went on until my grandmother-in-law passed away. Michelle, thank you for everything over the years. Grandma must have been happy too. She was grateful to you until the end, Daniel said, his kind words bringing tears to my eyes. Surrounded by children to great-grandchildren, my grandmother-in-law was well cared for. In her younger days, when I was new to household tasks, she taught me how to live properly. She was kind and fun, though strict at times, and seemed to laugh most of the time. Thanks to her, I could keep my job from my younger days and work part-time even during caregiving. Despite caregiving being a significant burden, now that it's over, I find myself cherishing those days with nostalgia. I never imagined that the environment around me would change so drastically right after that. Daniel, due to his job on the ship, often has to be away from home for long periods. I'm proud of him for his important work in American logistics, but living with my in-laws puts me at a disadvantage. The moment my grandmother-in-law passed away, my mother-in-law's attitude changed dramatically. Previously, she would try to appease me with sweet talk while dumping all the caregiving responsibilities on me. But as soon as the caregiving ended, she began to disregard me. When she went out, she would deliberately exclude me from the souvenirs, and when we passed each other in the house, she would bump into me on purpose. Her overly hostile behavior was so shocking that I couldn't help but be surprised before feeling disgusted. Moreover, my son Adam, who happened to be visiting, said something to me. "Hey, Grandma started saying nasty things again. It's an old story, but when Adam was just 5 or 6 years old, there was a significant incident with my mother-in-law. She filled Adam with baseless accusations against me, and upset, Adam reported this to the whole family. Your mom is cheating. She's going to leave you eventually. That woman is no good. She doesn't work and she's all bad. Your dad hates her too. That's why he doesn't come home. You got that?" I was shocked to learn she had been teaching him such lies. I wasn't cheating, and despite working every day and doing household chores, I was truly busy. Moreover, the reason Daniel was absent was genuinely because of work. That's such a joke. It's ridiculous to take it seriously anyway. Such a small kid won't understand anything, my mother-in-law sulked, and my father-in-law was also furious about it. I was too busy comforting a sad Adam to worry about anything else. Later, when Daniel came home, I felt relieved as he changed his demeanor and scolded my mother-in-law. Now, let's return to the present. Daniel is currently away for work. Maybe because of that, my mother-in-law seems to be taking full advantage. You'd think she'd have more free time now that the caregiving is over, but instead, she keeps me very busy. She frequently hands me complicated recipes to cook and demands a thorough cleaning. Just the other day, she invited the neighborhood ladies over, and they watched a marathon of dramas. I thought they were just enjoying themselves, but I ended up having to clean up the messy room full of snack wrappers and drink spills right during the busiest time before dinner. It added unnecessary work, and I was understandably irritated. "Really, you're such a drag. Aren't you done yet? Hurry up and get dinner ready," she'd say while I was sweating from cleaning up. But come dinner time, she wouldn't even sit at the table, claiming she was full from the snacks. I was utterly exasperated. Then Adam complained to me. "She says she doesn't like you and that you should disappear. I'm going back home. I feel sick. Wouldn't it be better if we lived separately from Grandma? I think Dad would understand too." I calmed down an upset Adam and drove him to the station for his return trip. Of course, I couldn't let things continue like this. Soon, I'll need to have a serious talk with Daniel. The day after Adam left, I was troubled, not by my mother-in-law, but by something else. Suddenly, I started feeling unwell. My limbs were cold, yet my face would suddenly heat up, and I'd break out in a sweat. It seems like today my symptoms of menopause were particularly severe. I've been feeling oddly unwell since last year, and the doctors told me it's menopause. Right now, they're just watching how it goes, with no medication yet, but some days can be tough. Maybe the stress from what I heard about my mother-in-law's behavior is getting to me. By evening, my condition worsened, and I was lying down in my room. "Hey, what are you sleeping for? Dinner." I could hear my mother-in-law stomping towards me. I had such a headache that it was hard to even get up, let alone deal with her. I thought about pretending to be asleep, but she suddenly yanked off the blanket, and I reluctantly sat up. "Dinner." She clapped her hands as she demanded dinner. If she wants dinner, she should make it herself. Why does she always expect me to do it as if she's someone special? My grandmother-in-law used to manage the kitchen, but lately it's only been me cooking. My mother-in-law only steps into the kitchen when Daniel is home, and even then, she barely does more than arrange the plates. Maybe she can't cook at all. I'm feeling unwell. I think it's menopause, but I really can't do the housework today. "Please, can you make dinner today?" I managed to say, feeling utterly tired. My mother-in-law had severe menopause symptoms herself. I had already moved in with them and had my fair share of her snapping at me, so there's no doubt about it. I thought she'd understand the pain if I mentioned it was menopause. However, her reaction was the exact opposite of what I had hoped for. With a snort, she suddenly turned a bag over my head. "What?" I let out a small scream as something showered down on me in the dim room. Just waking from sleep and feeling sick, I couldn't tell what it was at first. A moment later, I realized it was the smell of potatoes. The bag she turned upside down was nearly empty, but she had sprinkled me with snack crumbs. The sheer unexpectedness of it left me dumbfounded for a moment. "Don't be lazy," she said with a click of her tongue, and then left the room. Here I was, bedridden and in pain, being yelled at. I almost felt like clicking my tongue back at her. How could she do something like this? Rather than anger, it was a bizarre sensation, like seeing some rare animal. I felt sure that my limit was nearing. About half a year later, I had taken some paid leave from work and was preparing for a trip. It was for my younger brother's wedding. He had been living with his girlfriend for a few years, and they were finally tying the knot. Their home is in Michigan, and they wanted to have the wedding there. Since it's quite far from here, I booked a hotel for a 3-night, 4-day stay. I decided to take the trip and participate overnight. My younger brother offered to cover the hotel costs, but I declined. Since the date of the ceremony was set according to my schedule, I wanted to pay for it myself. It's a small ceremony with just the family, but it's a rare opportunity for all the relatives to gather, so I'm looking forward to it. Since nobody else would likely prepare meals in my absence, I decided to make a week's worth of meals in advance the night before leaving, while we were eating dinner. I told my in-laws about the meals I prepared and stored in the fridge. My father-in-law thanked me, but as usual, my mother-in-law seemed displeased with everything about me. Why are you even going to your brother's wedding? It's just a remarriage, isn't it? Probably nothing good, she said with a frown, and my father-in-law glared at her. Actually, both my brother and his partner are marrying for the first time, I replied. My mother-in-law burst out laughing with a rude expression. First marriage at 41? There must be something seriously wrong with him to be single that long. Your brother's at a good age, yet he's having a flashy wedding. Shameless. She seemed to be confusing him with another brother, or had completely forgotten about my family structure. In fact, I have 3 brothers. The youngest brother and I have a 15-year age gap, so he's still quite young. No, it's my youngest brother who's getting married. He's in his early 33s, and his partner is in her 24s, I explained, shrugging. My mother-in-law raised her eyebrows, offended by the correction, but soon twisted her face into a sneer again. How creepy. His partner is 24. That's like a parent and child, she said. I was astonished at her refusal to listen. This time, even my father-in-law seemed to realize the mistake, clearing his throat. I swallowed a sigh as I responded. It's not 24, she's in her 24s. They're only 5 or 6 years apart. Doesn't that sound normal to you? I talked to her over video call the other day, and she seemed like a very sensible young lady. I ended the conversation with my in-laws and started preparing to leave. At the venue, I should see Adam and my parents as well. I packed a beautiful outfit for the ceremony into my suitcase and meticulously checked for anything I might have forgotten. From the living room, I could hear my mother-in-law loudly talking to my father-in-law. It will be refreshing to have her gone for a while. I felt the malice in her words on my back as I bit my lip. Getting angry now could provoke her to tamper with my carefully packed belongings. Better to endure until I leave the house the next morning. I pulled my slightly large suitcase and headed to the front door. Never come back, and while you're at it, why don't you just get a divorce and leave? Her words momentarily stopped me. As I began walking towards the entrance again, I answered cheerfully, yes, as you wish. My voice was calmer than I expected. Maybe I'm more relieved by this situation than I realized. I had reached my limit of endurance long ago. Actually, I had been in touch with Daniel beforehand, steadily preparing for this day. Just stop with the nonsense and really do it soon, my mother-in-law scoffed, munching on snacks and laughing early in the morning. It's surprising how much she can eat just after waking up. I decided to walk to the station. As I left the house, before getting too far, I looked back at our familiar home and said with emotion, I really owe this house a lot. Except for my mother-in-law, I've been grateful to this home for a long time, to my grandmother-in-law, my father-in-law, Daniel, and Adam. I even feel indebted to the roof and the walls. But I can't recall ever needing my mother-in-law's help. Somehow, I feel incredibly lighthearted. I hurried to the place where my beloved family was waiting, pulling a slightly large suitcase behind me. I plan to stay at the hotel for 3 nights and 4 days. After that, I'm set to move into a new place where I can live alone. I met up with Daniel at my brother's wedding venue. We had planned this beforehand. The reason the wedding was scheduled at this time was so Daniel could be sure to attend. Hard day, huh? Got this for you, Daniel said with a lonely smile, pulling out divorce papers. His name hadn't been filled in yet. We were both going to sign it, mutually agreeing it would be our final joint task as a couple. Thanks. Let's write it when we get back to the hotel. I booked a twin room. Hope that's okay. Though it's sad for my brother getting married today, this is also a new beginning for us. I hope it's okay that our signing the divorce papers happens on the same day as the wedding. I won't announce it in front of everyone today, but we'll have to make it known later that we've divorced. Of course, a double would have been fine too. Thanks for booking. Daniel and I smiled affectionately at each other. No one could possibly imagine that in a few hours, we'd be signing divorce papers. I marvel at how heavy a single piece of paper can feel. Filing this means we won't be husband and wife anymore after being together for over 31 years. Just one sheet is all it takes." "I'm truly sorry," Daniel apologized, but I shook my head. Being with Daniel was always genuinely happy for me. I knew when I married him that he wouldn't be home much, and there was nothing I disliked about that. It was just his mother that I could never get along with. "Don't apologize. You were a wonderful husband. Let's be good friends from now on," I said with all the fondness I felt. Tearfully, Daniel took my hand. "Thank you for everything," Daniel repeated, making me tear up as well. I secretly decided to attribute these tears to happiness for my brother's wedding. The next day, Daniel went back to his parents' home alone. He explained the situation to his in-laws. At first, my father-in-law was just shocked by the sudden mention of divorce, but when he understood the full story, he became furious. "How dare you drive out someone who cared for my mother until the end?" he shouted angrily, causing my mother-in-law to visibly panic. While I was primarily involved in caring for my grandmother-in-law, including the physically demanding tasks like bathing, my father-in-law, who had been strong since his youth, helped me towards the end. He also took care of turning our bedridden grandmother in bed. In a way, my father-in-law and I were caregiving partners. However, my mother-in-law really hadn't helped with anything. It seems my father-in-law had been silently resentful about this. "You've been terrible at housework ever since you married into the family. I kept quiet because you gave birth to our son, but you used my mother's leniency as an excuse to avoid helping out. You're nothing like Michelle, who did everything," his grievances escalated. My mother-in-law tried to retort when compared to me, but my father-in-law started speaking before she could get a word in. "It should have been you who left. To think we lost a hard-working daughter-in-law like that. Do you have any idea how much luxury Michelle's salary provided us? You haven't earned a single penny." Mentioning money put my mother-in-law in a weak position. She had never worked outside the home. The household expenses, including what my in-laws used, were covered by Daniel. Being a sailor, Daniel earned a good salary, and my in-laws converted all their pension into pocket money. Honestly, our family was wealthy. The costs related to the children or my grandmother-in-law's care could actually be covered by Daniel's earnings. Yet I worked because working was fulfilling for me. That's why I had no problem using my earnings for the family. I gave trips and theater tickets to my in-laws, and for birthdays, I treated them to upscale dining. Truthfully, these gifts were also investments in securing some time for myself. "It's not too late, Daniel. Go apologize now and ask Michelle to marry you again," my father-in-law finally said. Realizing how precarious her position was, my mother-in-law was utterly distraught. But it was too late. She couldn't prevent the consequences of her actions from coming back to haunt her. "This is the house I built. You leave," my father-in-law, finally enraged, began to drive my mother-in-law out. Understandably, she resisted vehemently, screaming and scratching at her hair in frustration. As she raised her voice in anger, she began clawing at her hair, repeating how frustrated she was. This sight was bizarre and apparently quite frightening. "No, I won't leave. I won't divorce. How am I supposed to live alone at this age?" In the end, she cried out in resistance, but she was no match for my physically imposing father-in-law, who dragged her out of the house. He firmly shut the door and even locked it. My mother-in-law clung to the front door, crying loudly enough that the neighbors, shocked by the commotion, called the police. Reluctantly, my father-in-law opened the door when approached by the police, but his anger did not subside for several days afterward. My mother-in-law and father-in-law lived as if they were separated within the same house. They didn't speak a word to each other and avoided even looking at each other. Whenever my father-in-law entered the same room, my mother-in-law would flee in fear. Such a life couldn't continue, and ultimately, my father-in-law called his daughter, who lived far away, to hold a family meeting. "I'm going to divorce her," he declared. But his daughter showed sympathy for my mother-in-law and opposed the idea, making the discussion difficult. Daniel then detailed the situation, confirming each instance of harassment I had endured. She had even lied to our son, trying to turn him against me. Daniel presented emails he had asked our son to write, recalling those times as evidence. He also spoke about the suffering I endured during my menopause. To this point, my father-in-law, who had witnessed it, expressed his disapproval. I hadn't known, but he had told my mother-in-law to stop such behavior. He had advised her to apologize, but she hadn't followed through. And now this incident. She had unfairly criticized my brother and mockingly told me to divorce and leave. All this happened while Daniel was away, and she acted differently in front of him. Daniel added that I had managed all the household chores and, along with the caregiver, had cared for my grandmother-in-law. In that situation, how would you feel if your husband's mother did the same to you? And if your father-in-law got angry on your behalf, whose side would you take? When Daniel posed this question, his sister fell silent. Seeing this, my mother-in-law became furiously upset. Are you betraying me too, after all I did by giving birth to you? Hearing this, she didn't claim to have raised them. I ironically admired her honesty. I had always asked Daniel about this. It was mostly our grandmother who took care of my sister and me. Mom was always out with neighbors. Perhaps remembering her past, his sister looked at my mother-in-law with contempt after hearing about the bullying. In the end, the only working housewives in this house were my grandmother-in-law, whom I cared for until the end, and myself. My mother-in-law was indeed the mother who had given birth to 3 children, but when it came to housework, she mostly just wanted to reap the benefits without doing much work. By reflecting on this, her habitual negligence was finally noticed by the family, completely undermining her position. Realizing her situation, my mother-in-law stopped her tirades and began to sob. In the end, it was decided not to divorce out of pity, but my father-in-law is considering separating from her. Upon hearing this, I expressed my desire to meet with my father-in-law. All these events after my departure were relayed to me by Daniel. If Dad was going to get so angry now, he should have helped Michelle from the start. But then again, what can I say when I wasn't there? Daniel sighed despondently, sipping his hot coffee. We were in our favorite cafe, a place we had liked since our younger days. Daniel ordered a coffee, and I chose a soft drink, which I hadn't had in a very long time. As I finished hearing about my mother-in-law's disgraceful behavior, I smiled softly. Don't be too hard on yourself. You were away because of your job, right? It's an important job. There are many people who rely on you. I understand that. My words of encouragement weren't false. Daniel's job is admirable, being a sailor supporting people's lives by working in maritime shipping, sometimes away for years at a time. I think that's incredible. That's why I've been putting up with it, but I'm sorry for this time. I still like and respect you, but I just couldn't bear being family with your parents anymore. I finally managed to say the words that had been stuck in my chest for so long. Daniel looked a bit sad, but nodded in understanding. He didn't blindly side with his parents just because they were his family. He understood the situation fairly, which made me incredibly happy. I couldn't help but smile broadly, and Daniel looked at me as if dazzled. I only heard about what Daniel was feeling at that moment much later. He said he thought, "Oh, she's beautiful. Your smile was more radiant than ever before." To me at that moment, Daniel also seemed sweeter than ever before. Now, back to the story. The day after I met Daniel at the cafe, I met with his father with Daniel's cooperation. It was time for the final act of my revenge. When Daniel's father arrived at the cafe, he was dressed a bit more stylishly than usual since he was going out. After some small talk about the weather, I quickly brought up the main topic. I heard from Daniel that you're considering separating from your wife. It's fine while you're still healthy, but it'll be tough on your own later, right? Especially after all the commotion. If you really do decide to separate, I'm willing to help with caring for you in your later years. His father clearly looked pleased by this. Daniel's sister lived far away, and his son Daniel could be away for long periods at sea. He had never been one to do much around the house like cooking, cleaning, or laundry. He would surely appreciate my help, having taken care of his mother until the end. Of course, I'll separate from her. No, wait, maybe it's better to divorce, he said, furrowing his brow and crossing his arms. I was hoping that my almost certainly ousted mother-in-law would go from almost to definitely ousted, but it seemed the situation was developing even more unfavorably for her. If I suddenly dropped dead, she'd probably make a big fuss, wouldn't she? Better to divorce her properly before that. That's definitely better, he continued. Daniel looked as if he wanted to say, "Here we go again," as his father began speaking more decisively. His father has a tendency to act swiftly once he's made up his mind. Sometimes he even goes a bit too far, but that's just his nature. Knowing this, I felt a sense of satisfaction as the situation unfolded. I nodded in agreement with a grin. You really do think things through. I'm impressed by your foresight, I said, knowing how to handle him after living with him for so many years. Pushing him a little like this would likely lead him to actually do it. Daniel chuckled, sensing my intentions but chose not to stop me. He was probably more angered by my mother-in-law's behavior than I was. His father, energized, stood up to go get the divorce papers right then. Out of kindness, I decided to introduce the lawyer Daniel, and I consulted for our divorce to help my father-in-law. From that day on, my father-in-law began actively pursuing the divorce. It was clear that my mother-in-law was destined for a lonely life. 2 weeks later, I returned to what was once my familiar home, now just my former in-laws' house, to collect the belongings I hadn't been able to take with me before. I had taken all the valuables, but it was impossible to take everything: clothes, books, photos filled with memories, drawings by my son when he was little, and bedding and furniture I bought with my own salary. Over the years, I had accumulated many personal items in that house. This visit turned out to be the last time I would see my mother-in-law. By then, her divorce had been decided, and she was visibly panicking. As I went to collect my belongings, she began to kneel before me, her face pale as she started apologizing. "Michelle, please forgive me. I beg you, it was all just a joke. Please come back and convince your husband." I completely ignored her and continued packing. After continuing to grovel, my mother-in-law stood up abruptly. It seemed she was upset at being ignored. She began to hurl vile insults at me again, reverting to her old ways. "This woman, how dare you when I'm being so humble? You've been nothing but trouble since you married into this family. Just leave and die alone miserably," she shouted, adding more simpler yet unrepeatable insults. I continued to ignore her and packed the items into a cardboard box. Suddenly, she screamed and lunged at the box. Taken aback, I dodged, and she ended up overturning the box that contained neatly folded clothes. The clothes were scattered all over the floor. She then began stomping on and kicking the clothes like throwing a tantrum. "Enough already," Daniel shouted and glared at her, standing tall. His mother, usually hearing only compliance from her obedient son, froze as if it were the end of the world. I held back Daniel with one hand and turned an emotionless face towards my mother-in-law. "I am no longer your daughter-in-law. You are no longer my mother-in-law. Our relationship is completely over. Thank you for nothing. I was helped by your mother and father-in-law and your husband." I swiftly stepped around the scattered clothes without bothering to fold them again. I just stuffed them into the box and lifted it up. "Don't touch my things, stranger. Goodbye." I tossed those final words at the disheveled mother-in-law and quickly left the room. I had no desire to share space with that woman any longer. I called Daniel to take care of the rest of the belongings. I got into the car driven by my brother and waited as he prepared to leave. I could still hear my mother-in-law shrieking from inside the house, but listening to her was a waste of time. After we left, I heard she continued to beat her own head and wailed terribly. As far as I was concerned, there was never a chance for reconciliation, but it seemed she deeply regretted cutting off her last hope. But her regrets were too late to matter to anyone. About a month later, my mother-in-law was finally evicted from the house and began living alone in a modest place. Daniel occasionally visits his mother to check on her well-being, as does his sister. I've heard that my mother-in-law now lives in her old clothes, substituting them for pajamas, and doesn't even bother to take a shower regularly. Apart from shopping, she hardly goes outside, spending her days eating fast food and budget snacks, while lamenting her impoverished life. Apparently, she did split some assets with my father-in-law during the divorce, but sadly, it wasn't a significant amount, and she's living with financial insecurity in her old age. I don't know about my sister, but I'm not giving her any support. That's obvious, right? Daniel told me this with a shrug. As a well-paid sailor, Daniel was always a source of pride for his mother. She never expected to be completely cut off by her own son. All this was because she constantly disregarded me, the wife her son chose. And yet, the irony is that she herself had said, "Never come back, and just get a divorce and leave." Now she's the one who can't ever come back. It's exactly like the saying, "Curses return upon the heads of those that curse." She should have been prepared to face her own misfortunes if she wished ill on others. 5 years after the divorce, I'm enjoying a peaceful life alone with my cat in an apartment about a 25-minute drive from what used to be my in-laws' home. I found this place after looking for somewhere convenient for commuting to work. The rental is pet-friendly and welcomes animals. It's a lovely place with good sunlight. I still visit my former father-in-law's home once a week to cook him various dishes. Our relationship has improved since the divorce. My sister-in-law, who lives far away, can hardly look me in the eye, given how much I still help out. Daniel and I still keep in touch. In fact, when he returns from his long sea voyages, we make sure to go on dates. It's almost like we're courting each other anew. We go to movies, visit museums, and despite being somewhat new at this, our relationship feels fresh and exciting. We spend hours on the phone and exchange messages, finding it surprisingly enjoyable. Adam, who visits us on his days off, jokes about our fake divorce, saying, "You two just went back to being lovers, didn't you?" But the truth is, Daniel and I never were lovers before. Our marriage was arranged, and we never really had a period of romance. So now, it's like I'm building a romantic relationship with him for the first time. We even have a secret pact. If we ever find ourselves completely free from having to deal with his mother, whether she passes away, moves in with his sister, or goes into a facility, then we'll remarry. Daniel suggests that this would be when no more welfare checks on his mother are necessary. Discussions about whether his sister and her husband will start living with her or place her in a facility have already begun. Our reunion might not be so far off after all. After more than 31 years together and now nearing our 55s, it feels somewhat embarrassing to talk about this, but I'm thrilled at the prospect of experiencing true love with Daniel, whom I've always cared for deeply. My name's Mary, and life took a tough turn when I was just 10. My dad had been sick for a while, but I didn't really understand what was going on until he was gone for good. One day he was there, and the next day, there was just an empty seat at the dinner table. It didn't take long for my mom to fill that empty space. 2 months later, she brought home Jack. I guess she felt lonely and needed someone fast. Jack moved in like he owned the place, and it was clear he didn't want me around. "Mary, this is Jack." "Jack, this is my daughter Mary." Mom introduced us the day he moved in. Jack looked at me coldly, like he'd rather be anywhere else. "Hi," I managed to say, feeling shy but trying to be polite. Jack just nodded, not even smiling. He turned to Mom. "Linda, can we talk about the living arrangements?" I remember feeling a chill as they walked away, his hand on her shoulder. It didn't take long before I started feeling like an outsider in my own home. Jack had rules for everything and was always on my case. "Don't leave your stuff in the living room. Eat faster, don't make too much noise. It was non-stop. Mom just went along with whatever Jack said, her eyes looking empty or maybe just tired. One evening at dinner, things boiled over. I accidentally knocked over a glass of water, and it spilled towards Jack. "Clumsy kid, can't you do anything right?" Jack snapped, jumping up as the water splashed on his pants. "Sorry, Jack, it was just an accident," I stammered, feeling my face heat up. "Sorry doesn't clean up messes, Mary." "Be more careful," he scolded, his voice louder than it needed to be. Mom just sat there, quietly dabbing her mouth with a napkin, not saying anything. I looked at her, hoping she would say something, anything, to stand up for me, but she stayed silent. I heard them arguing in their room. Jack's voice was loud and harsh. "Linda, that kid of yours needs to shape up. I'm not going to live in chaos just because you're used to it." Mom's reply was soft, but I could catch bits of it. "Jack, please, she's just a child. She's still adjusting." "Adjusting? It's been months. I'm telling you, if things don't change." I didn't hear the rest, but I didn't need to. The message was clear. Jack wanted me out of the way, and Mom wasn't fighting too hard against it. The next few months were just as hard. Jack's complaints were a daily thing, and Mom's silence grew heavier. I was walking on eggshells, trying not to make a sound, trying to disappear if I could. But you can't disappear in your own home, can you? Even a 10-year-old knows that much. Life at home got more complicated when Mom told us she was expecting. Jack already had a hard time tolerating me, and the news didn't exactly make him happy. He was silent for a long minute before he spoke, and when he did, his words were cold. "Well, that's just great, Linda. Just what we needed," he said, his tone dripping with sarcasm. Mom just smiled, but it was a weak smile. "It's a blessing, Jack. You'll see, a fresh start for us." I felt a mix of excitement and dread. A little brother or sister seemed like a dream, someone new to connect with, but with Jack's mood swings, I wasn't so sure. The months flew by, and the baby finally arrived. It was a girl, and they named her Lauren. I was thrilled. She was so tiny, and when I first saw her, all wrapped up in her pink blanket, my heart melted. I thought having Lauren around might make things better, even make Jack soften up a bit. Holding Lauren felt magical. She was so small, her tiny fingers grasping at nothing. "Hey there, Lauren, I'm your big sister, Mary. I'm going to take good care of you," I whispered, promising silently to be there for her no matter what. But the magic didn't last. Bringing Lauren home changed things again. Jack became fussier than ever, especially about money. One night, about a week after Lauren came home, I overheard him talking to Mom in the kitchen. His voice was harsh, louder than it needed to be. "More expenses, Linda. Diapers, formula, who knows what else. And what about Mary? She's not even mine, and I'm paying for her too." Mom's voice was a quiet murmur. "Jack, please, she's just a child. We can manage, things will settle down. It's not just about managing Linda, it's about priorities. We need to think about our family now, our real family." I knew what that meant. I wasn't real family. The sting of those words hit me hard. I slid down the wall by my door, hugging my knees, trying not to cry. The final straw came when Jack sat us down in the living room one evening. His face was serious, and he avoided looking at me. "Linda, we need to think about the future. Mary's getting older, and expenses are piling up. Maybe it's time she went to live with her Aunt Joyce." It felt like a punch in the gut. Being sent away, just like that. Mom finally spoke, looking at me with sad eyes. "Mary, honey, it might not be so bad. Aunt Joyce has a nice house, and you'll be well taken care of." "But Mom, I don't want to go. I want to stay here with you and Lauren." The room went silent. Jack's next words were cold and final. "It's decided then. I'll call Joyce in the morning." Moving in with Aunt Joyce was like stepping into a different world. Her house was big, clean, and always silent, too silent for comfort. The first day I arrived, She laid down her rules like we were negotiating a peace treaty after a long war. "You'll follow my rules under my roof, Mary. No nonsense, no mess, no back talk," she declared as she led me through the hall to what would be my room. The room was plain, with bare walls and a single bed in the corner. It felt nothing like home. I nodded, too tired and upset to argue. "Homework right after school, chores before dinner, and lights out by 8. I won't tolerate any laziness or sloppiness, you hear?" Aunt Joyce continued, her voice firm. "Yes, Aunt Joyce," I whispered. "Speak up when you're spoken to. Let's have no mumbling here," she snapped. I quickly corrected my tone. "Yes, Aunt Joyce, I understand." The days that followed blended into each other, each as strict and unforgiving as the last. Aunt Joyce was tougher than anyone I'd ever known. She had a way of making simple conversations feel like interrogations. Homework was a battlefield too. If I got a B instead of an A, Aunt Joyce had sharp words for me. "You can do better than this. Your laziness won't fly here," she'd scold, even though I'd spent hours poring over books. The worst part was how she reminded me of my mom's decision to send me away. If I dared to talk back or ask for less criticism, she'd retort sharply, "No wonder your mom sent you here. You need discipline. You obviously weren't getting it." Those words hurt. They always did. They made me feel unwanted, unloved, like I didn't belong anywhere. I was just another problem Mom solved by sending me away. Days turned into weeks and weeks into months. I learned to keep my head down, do what I was told, and only speak when necessary. Aunt Joyce had no patience for tears or complaints, and I didn't have the energy left to fight. "It's for your own good," she'd often say after scolding me harshly, as if her sharp words were supposed to make me into someone better. I wasn't sure who that better person was supposed to be. All I knew was that I was getting really good being alone, at being quiet, and at not being a problem. Because in Aunt Joyce's house, not being a problem was the best thing you could be. Living with Aunt Joyce was suffocating, and I found myself missing my mom more each day, even though I knew she had let me go without much of a fight. One afternoon, the feeling of missing her got too strong to ignore. Aunt Joyce was out, probably at her bridge club, and I knew I had at least a couple of hours before she'd be back. Her phone was always left on the kitchen counter, charging next to the fruit bowl. It seemed like my only link back to my old life. I hesitated for a minute before I picked it up. Dialing my mom's number was like muscle memory. I hadn't forgotten it, and maybe I never would. My heart raced as I heard the phone ring once, twice, then I heard her voice. "Hello? Mom, it's me, Mary." There was a pause, a breath, maybe. Then, "Mary, why are you calling?" I swallowed hard, my throat tight. "I just wanted to hear your voice." Another pause, longer this time. Then she spoke, cold and hard. "You shouldn't have called." "But Mom." "Mary, listen to me. You need to stop this. I can't have you calling me." "But why? I miss you, Mom. I miss home. When can I come back?" Her voice was flat, emotionless, like she was discussing the weather. "You can't. That's done. Don't call here anymore." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "Mom, please. Just don't, Mary. There's nothing here for you. Goodbye." She hung up and the line went dead. The silence in the kitchen was overwhelming. I felt my hand shake as I put the phone back on the charger. The finality in her voice broke something in me. She didn't want me. She really didn't want me anymore. Tears blurred my vision as I stumbled to my room. I closed the door softly, not wanting to make any noise that might hint at my rebellion. I sat on the floor, my back against my bed, and let myself cry. The room felt smaller than ever, like a box slowly closing in on me. I heard the front door open and close, and Aunt Joyce's voice called out, "Mary, you better have finished your chores." "Yes, Aunt Joyce," I called back, quickly wiping my eyes with the back of my hand. I didn't want her to see any signs of weakness. Weakness wasn't allowed here. I went to the kitchen to help with dinner, acting like nothing had happened, but inside, I felt different, emptier, more alone. Mom's final words kept playing over and over in my head. That night, Aunt Joyce found the call log on her phone. Her face twisted into a scowl as she stormed into my room, her voice a harsh whisper that cut through the quiet. "So, you took my phone to call your mother. Thought you'd go behind my back." I froze, feeling the blood drain from my face. I just wanted to hear her voice. Aunt Joyce laughed, a harsh, grating sound. "And what did that get you, huh? She doesn't want you, Mary. Even you can't deny it now." Her words were like ice, and I felt them chill me to the bone. She grabbed my arm, her grip tight and painful. "No more phone, no more pity parties. You're here because she doesn't want you. Remember that." The punishment was severe, more chores, stricter rules, and the cold shoulder from Aunt Joyce, who made sure I felt just how unwanted I was every day after that. Aunt Joyce's house had become a prison, each day dragging on heavier than the last. It was clear I was nothing but a burden to her, a nuisance she put up with only because she had to. But even that thin thread of obligation snapped one chilly morning, a year into my stay. "You're packing your bags today, Mary," Aunt Joyce announced over breakfast, her voice stern and final. I stared at her, my spoon halfway in my mouth. "What? Why?" "Your mother stopped sending money." "No money, no reason to keep you here," she replied bluntly, sipping her coffee as if we were discussing something as trivial as the weather. I felt a cold dread settle in my stomach. "So what happens to me now?" She shrugged, a cold, dismissive gesture. "Not my problem. You can go live with your grandmother. If she won't take you, then it's the orphanage." The thought of going to an orphanage terrified me, but the mention of Grandma sparked a tiny flicker of hope. I hadn't seen her since I was little, barely remembered her, but surely she wouldn't turn me away. Packing my bags felt surreal, like it was happening to someone else. I was packing up my life at Aunt Joyce's, each item a reminder of the year I'd lost. Aunt Joyce drove me to Grandma's house, and the car ride was silent except for the hum of the engine. When we arrived, the house was smaller and cozier than Aunt Joyce's big, imposing place. Grandma was waiting at the door, her expression unreadable. "This is Mary, your granddaughter," Aunt Joyce said, not bothering with any pleasantries. "I can't keep her anymore. Linda stopped paying." Grandma looked me over, her eyes sharp but not unkind. "I see, come in, Mary." Aunt Joyce didn't stay long. With a brief nod, she left, her duty to me discarded as easily as she had gotten rid of me. Inside, Grandma's house was warm and filled with the scent of cinnamon and something sweet baking. It felt welcoming, a stark contrast to Aunt Joyce's cold, sterile environment. "You'll be staying in the guest room. I suppose we'll need to sort out some more permanent arrangements," Grandma said as she led me down the hall. The guest room was small, with a window overlooking the garden. It felt safe, a feeling I hadn't associated with a place in a long time. "Thank you, Grandma," I said quietly, still unsure of my welcome. She nodded. "We're family, Mary. You belong here more than anywhere else." Over the next few weeks, I adjusted to life with Grandma. It was different. She was strict, but there was a kindness to her rules, a gentleness in her reprimands. "You need to do your chores, Mary. Everyone contributes here," she would remind me, but her tone was patient, not harsh. "Yes, Grandma," I would respond, grateful for her fair approach. Living with Grandma, I began to heal. I found comfort in the quiet routine of our days, the peaceful nights, and the steady rhythm of life that was so different from the chaos with Aunt Joyce. The months passed, and on my 19th birthday, Grandma made a decision that would change everything. Over breakfast, she slid an envelope across the table to me. "Take a look at this, Mary," she said, her voice carrying a mix of seriousness and warmth. I opened the envelope and pulled out some official-looking papers. "What's this?" "It's adoption papers, Mary. I want to adopt you, make things official so no one can ever make you feel unwanted again," she explained, watching me closely for my reaction. I felt a lump in my throat. "Really, Grandma? You mean it?" "Yes, I do. You're not just staying here, Mary. You're my family, and it's time we made that clear to everyone else too. 2 weeks later, it was done. We went to court, and I officially became Mary Bennett, with a new sense of belonging that I had longed for since Mom sent me away. With Grandma's support, I finally felt like I was home. I began looking forward to the future, and Grandma encouraged me to focus on my studies, especially science, which had always fascinated me. You've got a sharp mind for it, Mary. You could go into medicine. How would you like that? She suggested one day as we were going over some of my school projects. I'd love that, Grandma. I want to help people, I replied, the idea starting to take root. Then it's settled. We'll get you into a good college program. I'll support you every step of the way, she declared with determination. True to her word, Grandma was there for me throughout my high school years. She tutored me in math and science, using her old-school methods that were strict but effective. You need to understand the basics, Mary. You can't skip the foundation. She'd insist whenever I struggled with complex problems. I graduated with top marks, thanks to her unwavering support. Grandma then helped me navigate the daunting college application process. When I got accepted into a medical college with a partial scholarship, she was as proud as if she'd received the acceptance herself. We'll manage the finances. Don't you worry about that, Grandma said when I fretted over the costs. You focus on your studies and become the best doctor you can be. Medical school was tough but fulfilling. I was drawn to oncology, the branch of medicine that deals with cancer. It was hard, both emotionally and intellectually, but it felt right, like I was exactly where I needed to be. I completed my degree, then my internship, and finally my residency, each step a milestone that Grandma celebrated. You're making a real difference, Mary. I'm so proud of you, she'd say, her eyes shining with pride. By the time I turned 35, I was fully established in my career as an oncologist. My life was busy but fulfilling, filled with long hours at the hospital and the satisfaction of knowing I was making a difference. Through it all, Grandma was my anchor, always there to listen and offer advice on tough days. But life, as it often does, threw another curveball my way. Grandma's health, which had been declining, took a sudden turn for the worse. It was swift and unexpected, the kind of decline that leaves you scrambling to catch your breath. I remember coming home one evening, tired after a particularly tough day at the hospital. Grandma was sitting in her favorite armchair, looking out the window. Her voice was weaker when she called me over. Mary, come sit with me for a bit, she said, patting the chair next to her. I sat down and took her hand in mine. It felt fragile, like it could break with too much pressure. I'm not going to beat around the bush, she started, her tone serious. The doctors say there's not much time left. We need to talk about practical things. A lump formed in my throat, and my eyes filled with tears. Grandma, please. She squeezed my hand, her grip still strong. No tears now, Mary. We've got things to sort out. You need to be ready. The next few weeks were a blur of doctor's visits, late nights, and legal paperwork. Grandma wanted to make sure everything was in order for me, that there would be no complications with her estate or her wishes. When the end came, it was peaceful. Grandma passed away in her sleep at home, just as she had wanted. The emptiness left by her passing was overwhelming, and the silence in the house felt too heavy to bear at times. Planning the funeral was hard. I went through her address book, calling relatives and friends. The responses were polite, some even warm, but it became clear that not many would make the effort to come. My heart ached, not just for the loss of Grandma, but for the loneliness of this farewell. The funeral day was quiet, the chapel more empty than full. I stood there, feeling oddly detached as the priest spoke about life, loss, and legacy. It didn't take long after the funeral for the past I thought I had left behind to come knocking at my door. My mother, stepfather, and their daughter, who was now 21 years old, showed up unexpectedly. My mother didn't waste any time. Mary, you need to share the inheritance your grandmother left you, she demanded, her tone entitled. I stared at them, disbelief mixing with anger. You left me, remember? 21 years ago, you decided I was too much of a burden. My mother's face twisted into a sneer. Ungrateful girl. Now you're a rich doctor with an inheritance. You owe us. I laughed, the sound bitter. Grandma adopted me legally. You're nothing to me now. The shock on her face was almost comical. My stepfather, ever the bully, leaned in. You're going to regret this, Mary. As they left, I slammed the door behind them, the click of the lock sounding unusually satisfying. Standing there, my back against the door, I felt a mix of relief and renewed determination. A few days after their visit, I was at work when I got a call from a neighbor. Mary, it looks like your family's at your house again. They've been bringing in furniture. It looks like they're moving in or something. When I pulled into the driveway, seeing their car parked out front made my stomach turn. I walked in to find my mother, stepfather, and stepsister unpacking boxes in the living room, acting like they owned the place. What are you doing? I demanded, trying to keep my voice steady. My mother turned around, feigning surprise. Oh, Mary, we're just settling in. After all, this is family property. No, it's not. This is my house, legally left to me by Grandma. You need to leave now. My stepfather stepped forward with a smirk on his face. Make us. We're family, and we deserve a part of this house. I could feel the anger rising inside me. You haven't been family for over 21 years. You can't just come here and claim what's mine. My stepsister, who had been watching from the side, finally spoke up. Come on, Mary, don't be so heartless. We're just asking for what's fair. Fair? I laughed, the sound sharp and bitter. What's fair about abandoning a child? What's fair about only showing up when you think there's money to be had? They had no answers, just scowls and muttered curses. I'm calling the police, I declared, pulling out my phone. My mother tried to stop me. You'll regret this, Mary. I've regretted knowing you for years. This is nothing new. I shot back as I dialed 533. The police arrived quickly. I explained the situation, showing them the legal documents proving my ownership of the house and Grandma's will. The officers were firm. You need to leave, one of them told my mother and stepfather. This property doesn't belong to you, and if you don't comply, you'll be removed forcibly. My stepfather glared at me, his anger clear, but there was nothing he could do. This isn't over, Mary, he threatened as they gathered their things. Oh, but it is, I replied, my tone cold and final. After they were gone, I walked through the house through Grandma's house. Each room was filled with memories, each corner a testament to her love and the life she had built here, a life she had fought to pass on to me. Standing in her favorite spot by the window, I made a promise, not just to her but to myself. I would not let the bitterness of the past tarnish my future. I had fought hard to become who I was, and I would continue to fight to honor her legacy and the sacrifices she had made for me. Hurry up with the coffee, she demanded, her voice full of urgency. This is why people who drop out and aren't even good-looking are just terrible at their jobs as housekeepers, my sister-in-law said with a smug expression on her face. Her words stung, and I was about to say something back, but then something unexpected happened. I noticed her fiancé standing nearby, and just as I caught his eye, there was a sudden, surprising hug. It was so out of the blue that I didn't quite understand what was going on. But somehow, that hug changed everything. It felt like the roles between me and my sister-in-law were reversed in an instant. Let me introduce myself. My name is Lauren, and I'm 37 years old. One of my favorite things to do is fall asleep while watching videos of my child's dance recital. My child is the best, an absolute angel. The way they move their tiny limbs and their adorable little butt during the dance is just the cutest thing ever. Spoiling my child is something I love doing because, to a parent, their child always seems more special than any other. And now that I'm thinking about it, maybe that's how my sister-in-law, Lily, was brought up too. Let's go back a few years to when I had just become a newlywed. When Jack, my husband, proposed, he mentioned that he wanted us to live with his parents after we got married. I was nervous at the thought, but I agreed. Moving in with my in-laws, Frank and Olivia, in their duplex, was a decision that many say doesn't work out well. But to my surprise, Frank and Olivia were incredibly kind, which put me at ease. Feeling reassured, I was happy to go ahead with the wedding plans. But things didn't stay smooth for long. At first, everything seemed fine with my in-laws, but things started to get strained with Lily. It began when I visited Jack's family home to discuss wedding details and registration. A relative of Jack's who was visiting at the time made a comment, saying, "Jack, you've got yourself a pretty bride." I felt flattered, but at that moment, I noticed Lily glaring at me with cold eyes. Frank, Jack's father, responded cheerfully, "Jack's lucky to have such a beauty." But when I glanced over at Lily again, I thought I saw her glaring at Frank too. At first, I thought I was just imagining things, so I brushed it off and soon forgot about it since we didn't see each other for a while. However, on the day of the wedding, something strange happened. Lily showed up wearing a white dress. She's in her late 30s, so she's definitely not an uninformed student who doesn't know the basic rules of wedding etiquette. She deliberately chose a color that clashed with my wedding dress. Naturally, my in-laws and Jack were shocked and asked, "What were you thinking?" But she simply replied, "This was all I had." According to my in-laws, Lily had left the house wearing a different colored dress and must have changed into the white dress on her way to the wedding, doing so sneakily. Changing clothes in secret like that can only be seen as a malicious act. To make matters worse, she even made a snide comment about my wedding dress, saying, "When Lauren wears it, it doesn't really look like a wedding dress, more like a cheap $250,000 dress. I guess it depends on who's wearing the fancy clothes." Then she just walked away. I couldn't understand why she would do something so hurtful. The next day, after the wedding ceremony, Lily's attitude changed dramatically. While I was doing my chores, she suddenly interrupted me, saying, "Hey, don't wash my laundry with yours." I had taken over the housework for Olivia, my mother-in-law, and was just trying to help out. But Lily didn't like that I had washed her laundry together with mine. She said, "Washing my clothes with a plain Jane's clothes might make me plain too. Disgusting. Wash them again." And then she threw her laundry at me before leaving the room. You might think I should have said something back, but I was so shocked that I couldn't find the words. Adults don't talk like that, right? Separating laundry because plainness might spread. It's the kind of thing you'd expect from a teenage girl who's just learning to be independent, not from a grown woman. To avoid any further hassle, I pretended to rewash the clothes, but just put them back in her closet. Olivia even said it was fine and apologized for Lily's behavior. But from that day on, Lily was relentless. It's true that I dropped out of school when I was younger to chase a dream, so my highest level of education is incomplete. But it's never been an issue for me, and I'm not ashamed of it. Being belittled for my education felt trivial to me. Lily, on the other hand, graduated from a national college near her home. It's not a prestigious university, but she acts like she's more elite than me because of it. She even started saying, "I'm an elite, unlike you." But Lily wasn't always like this. I couldn't figure out what had made her so upset, but a few months after the wedding, we had a gathering with relatives. Although everyone had already met at the wedding, this get-together was more relaxed, giving them a chance to chat with me and Jack. The atmosphere was lively, and soon enough, the conversation turned to our wedding. Jennifer's wedding dress was so cute, one of the relatives exclaimed. "Absolutely, Jack is lucky to have such a beautiful woman. I can't wait to see what their kids will look like," another added, clearly excited about our future together. I don't mean to brag, but I've always felt confident in my looks. Jack might not fit the traditional mold of handsome, but he has a well-balanced face and a charming aura that makes him popular with people. As the relatives chatted, lost in their own conversations and compliments, I noticed Lily bristling with displeasure. She suddenly blurted out, "You all might not know, but I was really popular in my school days." That was when it clicked for me. I understood the root of Lily's anger. Despite the stunned expressions of everyone around, Lily started bragging about how she was constantly admired in school, how men would swarm around her whenever she walked down the street. Honestly, it sounded far-fetched, especially when looking at Lily. To be frank, Lily isn't what you'd call traditionally beautiful. She has small eyes and a large, round nose, making it hard to believe the stories she was telling. Everyone listened with skeptical looks on their faces and soon lost interest, quickly changing the subject. I continued to listen out of pity, but it was hard to stay engaged when you could tell it was all made up. Later, when I went to the kitchen to get some drinks, Lily followed me and suddenly yanked my hair from behind. "What? You think you're better than me?" she hissed. I was taken aback and confused. "What are you talking about?" I asked. "I know you were just humoring me when I said I was popular." "I can tell," she snapped. I was momentarily at a loss for words. I mean, she had started claiming to have had 7 boyfriends at one point. It was obviously a lie. I tried to listen earnestly, but it's hard to stay interested when you know it's all made up. "You think you're so great just because you're called pretty, right? That's just because our country relatives aren't used to seeing women," she sneered, her grip tightening on my hair. "Lily, I'm not feeling great about this," I said, trying to keep calm. But she wasn't done. "Shut up," she shouted, yanking my hair even harder. "In this house, no. In this neighborhood, I'm the cutest. I've been told I'm cute since I was a child. Don't get cocky just because you wear makeup." Lily, who couldn't become prettier even with makeup, continued to accuse me. Okay, you're the cutest, Lily," I said, trying to pacify her. "See, you're just saying that," she snapped back. "Dropouts like you with your fake concern are so obvious." She pushed me, releasing my hair, and I fell hard to the floor. Satisfied, she spat in my face and said, "Don't get carried away just because you're called cute." "I'm the cutest," Lily declared as she walked away. This incident, of course, had to be reported to Jack and my in-laws. When I shared the story, everyone had a "not again" expression on their faces. I learned that Lily is a narcissist with an inflated sense of self-esteem, just like she acted at the family gathering. It turns out the root of this behavior was her late grandfather, who doted on her as his only granddaughter. He always told her she was cuter than celebrities on TV, which apparently skewed her perception of beauty. Because of this, she seems to believe she's the epitome of cuteness. This caused her trouble with classmates when she was younger, leading to conflicts. Everyone apologized to me for the inconvenience, but said there was nothing they could do. It seems Lily won't listen to anyone, according to Jack and the in-laws. I understood, but it was frustrating to hear that nothing could be done, especially when Lily's behavior wasn't just verbally abusive but also physically harmful. I thought to myself, they should do something about it. I even started considering divorce so soon after getting married. But then, within just 2 weeks, Lily brought home a man, introducing him as her fiancé. We were all surprised, as none of us had even heard that she was dating anyone. Her fiancé, Eric, was a serious-looking man with glasses, who seemed timid and kept his head down. Lily, on the other hand, was acting tough and domineering. There was no sign of affection or intimacy between them, making me wonder if he was really okay with marrying Lily. While I was preparing coffee in the kitchen, lost in thought about the situation, Lily started berating me again. "Hey, housekeeper, hurry up with the coffee. This is what happens when dropouts who are unattractive try to do a simple task. Don't keep my fiancé waiting. If this engagement gets called off, it's your fault," she snapped. Jack and the in-laws tried to calm her down, telling her that enough was enough, but she wouldn't listen. Just as I was about to respond, Eric looked up at me. His gaze was so intense that it caught me off guard. I was speechless and asked, "What? Why are you looking at me like that?" Then suddenly he exclaimed, "Sandra," and hugged me tightly. Lily, taken aback, let out a confused "huh." Everyone in the room was shocked. Eric continued, "You've been doing well. I was worried about you after you retired. There's no information about you online." I was flustered and mumbled, sorry." Eric quickly let go, realizing my discomfort. Lily, still confused, asked, "What's going on? Are you a fan for my marriage?" Eric, now more confident, proudly responded, "Yes, I'm a fan of Sandra." He seemed so different from the timid person we had seen earlier. Olivia, puzzled, asked, "Sandra, who's that?" Jack then explained, "It's the idol group Lauren used to be part of, right?" I nodded silently, unsure of how to respond. Amy Maria, later known as Amy and Maria, was the musical group I was part of during my teenage years. I moved to the city at 17 and performed under the stage name Mime Pew until I was 20. While Amy Maria wasn't world famous, we had our share of popularity. Unfortunately, the group disbanded because of some members' misconduct, and I left the music industry when I was 21. I had been a lead member and the group's leader, and it was because of this that I dropped out of school. I chose to follow my dream, working part-time jobs to support myself, and I've never regretted that decision. Back when I was a teenager and later decided to marry Jack, I was working at an apparel shop. I had never mentioned my past as a musician to my in-laws or to Lily. The topic just never came up, and I felt it wasn't relevant to my current life. "Wow, you were a musician. That's amazing. Why didn't you tell us?" Olivia exclaimed, thrilled to learn something new about me. "I had some fame, but it wasn't enough to appear on TV," I explained, feeling a bit embarrassed about it. I didn't really think it was worth mentioning. Now, being reminded of that part of my life in front of everyone, I felt a mix of emotions: pride, nostalgia, and a bit of embarrassment. Eric, still glaring at Lily, said, "Lily, you just said some harsh words to Sandra, didn't you?" Lily stumbled over her words, clearly taken aback by the sudden attention. "Oh, well, she muttered, not sure how to respond. Eric didn't let up. "How could you say such things to Sandra? What right do you have to act all high and mighty?" he snapped. "You ugly girl." Suddenly, Eric's anger flared, and he lunged at Lily, leaving everyone in the room stunned. "What? These two are engaged," someone whispered in disbelief. I quickly intervened, trying to calm the situation down. "Eric, calm down. I'm not bothered by it. Don't be so harsh on her," I said, turning to him, but Eric wasn't ready to let it go. "No, Sandra, you're wrong." Eric raised his voice, his frustration clear. "She only approached me because I'm a doctor. She said she would marry anyone if it meant bragging to her sister-in-law." "That's not true, Eric," I said quietly, trying to de-escalate the situation. But Eric wasn't done. "A girl who proposes just after 3 weeks of dating means nothing to me," he said, his voice heavy with disappointment. We were all dumbstruck by the unfolding drama. Apparently, Lily had planned to marry a high-status man just to boast to me. She had told people she'd caught a doctor husband because of her education. Before our wedding, Lily had scored her contacts, attending any dinner party and approaching any man with good prospects. Of course, it wasn't easy to find such a perfect match. Initially, she had casually confessed to handsome men or those in high corporate positions, but she faced nothing but failure. A few weeks later, Lily met Eric, a doctor. Not wanting to lose the chance of being with someone who earned a good income, Lily set her sights on Eric. Eric, inexperienced in love, thought to himself, "No one has ever pursued me so passionately." But a week later, he overheard Lily on the phone and realized the harsh truth: she didn't love him. She was just after the status of marrying a doctor. Despite this realization, Eric accepted her proposal, hoping that maybe, over time, Lily might grow to love him. Lily, who was willing to settle for anyone, and Eric, who just wanted to seize the opportunity, seemed oddly suitable for each other. But I kept silent, feeling that no one should marry a girl who looks down on others. Eric was beyond furious, while Lily was visibly frightened by his unexpected anger. Normally mild-mannered, Eric was enraged, which took everyone by surprise. Lily, in a weak voice, muttered, "What's so good about that dropout? That ugly girl. How dare you call Sandra ugly? You're the one who's lacking in class," Eric retorted, his anger intensifying. I decided to step in, my voice calm but firm. "Lily, you keep bringing up my dropout status. Is it really that bad?" I asked, watching as Eric's expression hardened. "Without education, of course it's bad," Lily replied, trying to sound confident, but failing. "So, the owner of your favorite restaurant, who started chef training right after high school, is bad too. And what about your favorite actor, who's also a dropout? Are they bad because they didn't complete their education?" I asked, pressing the point. "That's different, they're in special professions," Lily stammered, trying to defend her argument. "Well, I chose to drop out for a special career too as a musician. Does it only count if I'm successful?" I challenged her, my eyes locking onto hers. "I didn't even know you were a musician," Lily muttered, clearly taken aback. "Yeah, but even if you did know, you would have found another reason to insult me, wouldn't you?" I said, catching Lily off guard. She averted her eyes, unable to meet my gaze. "I don't like to brag about education," I continued, "but since you brought it up, let's talk about it. You might brag about Princeton, but your national colleges. Anyone can get in just by writing their name. And let's not forget, you graduated from the lowest performing high school in the state. Are you just proud of being able to write your name? Isn't that a bit empty?" I said with a smile, watching as Lily's face turned red with embarrassment. "Shut up," Lily snapped, but her voice lacked conviction. "Amazing, Lily, you can write your name. Are you satisfied now? You want to look down on me?" "Go ahead, Lily, you're amazing," I said, mockingly clapping for her. Eric joined in, exclaiming, "Cute. Why did I forget about Sandra for such an ugly girl? Fans are incredible, even now." Even though I didn't see myself as particularly cute, standing beside an adoring Eric, Lily's self-esteem crumbled. She looked devastated, muttering, "This is the worst. I've never been made fun of like this. I'm cute. It's your fault, you know. And besides, it's not just looks, your personality isn't cute either." "I know I'm not the cutest either," I admitted, "but I'm not as bad as you. Maybe start by fixing that ugly personality of yours." "What? Who do you think you are?" Lily's face twisted with anger. "You see," I continued calmly, "a woman's face ages with time. There's no point in being overly confident about your looks. What's important is the heart. Inner beauty shows on your face." Olivia clapped and nodded in agreement. "That's well said," she remarked. Jack added with a wry smile, "True. I used to like cute girls when I was younger, but when I started thinking about marriage, I began to value comfort and personality more. Lily, with your current attitude, you won't find happiness in marriage." Frank, my father-in-law, sharply commented, "You were always called cute, but that was as a grandchild, not in the eyes of the world. With a bad personality, you'll end up being ugly both inside and out." Lily sighed deeply, feeling the weight of everyone's words. "This is just the worst," she muttered, and then she started crying. Eric, showing no mercy, said, "Even though my fiancé is crying, I can't help but think that a girl with a bad personality has an ugly crying face. Let's call off this marriage. I'm confident I won't fall for someone like this. Sorry for being distracted by her, Sandra." And just like that, Lily's engagement ended incredibly quickly. She was kicked out of the house, with everyone telling her she needed to learn about life and work on herself. Initially, Lily was defiant. "I have friends," she said. "I won't let being kicked out bother me." But within 5 days, she returned home, defeated. "I fought with my friend and got kicked out. Can I come back?" she asked, her voice full of desperation. It seemed even her friend had seen through Lily's flaws after spending so much time together. No one was willing to take her in, and of course, my in-laws and Jack didn't accept her back either. They regretted pampering Lily too much over the years and apologized to me for not taking action sooner. We heard what was happening, but we didn't act. We're sorry, they said. I understand, I replied. It's hard for parents to kick out their child, but she's 21 now. She's an adult and needs to take responsibility for her actions. Jack then confessed that he had secretly planned to provide Lily with a separate house to live in, away from me. But before he could put his plan into action, Lily was already kicked out. He apologized to me, saying, "I'm sorry for making you endure that. A husband should protect his wife better, or else I'll deserve to be divorced." I smiled and joked back, "Well, I guess you're safe this time." Afterward, Lily moved into her own place, but life wasn't easy for her. She was robbed, asked for money by men she met on a dating app, sprained her ankle falling off her bike, and even found all her oranges rotten in her fridge. It seemed like her past misdeeds were catching up with her. Well, good luck to her, not that I'm really thinking about it much. I'm busy these days raising our little girl. She's growing up so fast it feels like just yesterday she was crawling, and now she's started walking around on her own. Recently, she even told me with a big smile on her face, "Mommy, I have a boyfriend. It's a boy from her kindergarten class." They started dating after playing house together and even made a little promise to get married one day. It's so cute and innocent. When Jack heard about it, he jokingly cried while sipping his drink, saying, "Don't leave Dad and get married." Of course, we both know that their relationship is just like playing house, a part of childhood fun. But it's also a reminder of how quickly kids grow up. Someday, our little girl will find someone she truly wants to marry, and when that time comes, we'll be ready to support her. Until then, Jack and I are focused on raising her to be the best person she can be. She's our pride and joy, and we want to help her become an even more wonderful young lady as she grows. But right now, the road to becoming a lady is still long, filled with learning moments and playful adventures. Speaking of which, she just made a big mess in the living room, so it's time for a little lecture and a cleanup. Every day brings new challenges and joys, and I'm excited to see the person she'll become. I'm Kelly, a 43-year-old mother of two, married to Larry, a kind man who's been my support for almost 22 years. Life's been full of ups and downs, but I've always believed that it's the people with you that make it bearable. That was until my brother Scott decided to take charge. Scott is 10 years younger than me, a whirlwind of bad decisions and wrong priorities. He's the kind of person who thinks the world owes him. Mom always said he'd grow out of it, but at 31 he's still the family's problem. It was a Sunday, the kind that calls for a family gathering at Mom's house. Her house was our safe place, full of childhood memories. As usual, Larry, the kids, and I were there, enjoying Mom's famous roast and her stories from the past. That's when Scott burst in like an unexpected storm. The door slammed against the wall, and he strutted in with a smug smile on his face. He wasn't alone. Clinging to his arm was a young woman, barely out of her teens, with a clearly pregnant belly and a dress more suited for a nightclub than a family lunch. Larry choked on his tea. Lauren, my 13-year-old, asked if she was going to be an aunt. Eric, the 10-year-old, was more interested in why Aunt Olivia's dress was so shiny. "Family, meet Olivia, my fiancée," Scott announced, as if he was showing off a prize. Mom's fork dropped. "Fiancée? Scott, we talked about this," she said. Olivia flipped her hair and gave us a look that could spoil milk. "Yeah, we're getting married, and this little guy," she patted her belly, "is Scott Jr." The room was so quiet you could hear the clock ticking. Larry cleared his throat. "Congratulations, Scott. That's big news," Scott smirked. "We're staying here for a while, you know, till we get our own place." Mom tried to smile, but I saw the worry in her eyes. It was like watching someone set up camp at the edge of a cliff. That night, after the kids were in bed, Larry and I talked. Kelly, your brother isn't just irresponsible, he's taking advantage of your mom. I knew he was right. Scott was a tornado, and we were all in his path. The only question was how much damage he would do before he moved on. The next few days were a blur of Scott and Olivia making themselves at home. Olivia turned the living room into her personal lounge, always putting her feet up on Mom's antique coffee table. Scott spent his days on his phone, laughing at things no one else found funny. Mom was running around, trying to keep up, making meals, cleaning up after them, and never getting a thank you. It was like watching someone slowly deflate. One evening, I found Mom alone in the kitchen, looking older than her years. "Mom, you can't let them walk all over you," I said. She sighed. "Kelly, he's my son, and that's my grandbaby. I can't turn them away." I wanted to scream, to tell her she was being used, but I bit my tongue. Family is complicated, and sometimes love means turning a blind eye, even when you know you shouldn't. That's how our new normal began. Scott and Olivia, the ungrateful guests, and the rest of us trying to keep the peace in a house that suddenly felt too small. Little did I know, this was just the calm before the storm. Living with Scott and Olivia turned our lives upside down. Every morning started with Olivia's loud complaints about her backache or cravings. She'd stroll into the kitchen in her pajamas, demanding breakfast like she owned the place. "Kelly, make me some of those pancakes, will you? The baby's craving them," she'd say, without even a please. I'd grit my teeth, trying to keep my cool. "Sure, Olivia, let me just get Lauren and Eric ready for school first." Scott was no help either. He'd be lounging on the couch, his feet up on the coffee table, glued to his laptop or gaming. "Hey, when's breakfast?" he'd yell, not even bothering to look up. Mom tried to play peacemaker. "Kelly, they're just young. Remember how we were?" I wasn't having it. "Mom, we never acted like entitled brats," but she just waved me off, scurrying to wait on them hand and foot. Things got worse as Olivia's due date approached. She'd leave a trail of mess wherever she went, dishes piled up, laundry forgotten, and there she'd be, on the phone gossiping for hours. One day, I snapped. I found her in the living room, her feet once again on the coffee table, talking loudly to a friend. And then I told Scott, "We need a new car, something safe for the baby, you know." I marched in. "Olivia, this isn't a hotel. You can't expect everyone to clean up after you." She rolled her eyes. "Chill, Kelly, I'm pregnant, remember." Scott finally spoke up. "Kelly, lay off her. Can't you see she's carrying my kid?" I shot back. "Being pregnant doesn't give you a free pass to be a slob, Scott." Mom came in, wringing her hands. "Please, let's not fight. It's not good for the baby." I looked at Mom, her face drawn and tired. "This isn't right, Mom. You're wearing yourself out for them." Mom wouldn't listen. "They're family, Kelly. What can we do?" The days dragged on. Scott and Olivia would disappear for hours, leaving Mom to clean up their mess. They'd return with shopping bags, laughing about their day out. One evening, I heard them planning a lavish wedding. "We need the best, babe. It's our day," Scott said, his arm around Olivia. Olivia giggled. "Of course, and your mom can help with the expenses, right?" I couldn't believe my ears. I confronted them. "You're planning a wedding you can't afford and expecting Mom to pay for it." Scott shrugged. "Why not? She's got the money." I was livid. "You can't keep using Mom like your personal ATM, Scott." My words fell on deaf ears. They just laughed and continued their planning, leaving me fuming. Life in Mom's house had gone from bad to unbearable. Olivia had given birth to a baby boy, Jerry. You'd think that would slow them down, but no, it only gave them more excuses. One morning, I walked into the kitchen to find Mom washing a mountain of dishes. Olivia was sprawled on the sofa, cooing at Jerry, while Scott played some game on his phone. "Morning, Mom. Why are you doing all these dishes?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. Mom just sighed. "Olivia needs to rest, and Scott's busy." I glanced at Olivia. "Busy doing what?" Olivia, you can't just leave everything to Mom. Olivia shot me a look. I just had a baby, Kelly. I'm not supposed to stress myself. Scott didn't even look up. Yeah, Kelly, back off. You don't know how hard it is. I couldn't believe it. Hard? You call sitting on your butt all day hard? Mom tried to calm things down. It's okay, Kelly. I don't mind. But I was past caring. No, it's not okay. You're not their servant. It was like talking to a wall. Scott and Olivia just didn't care. They'd leave the house for hours, leaving Mom to take care of Jerry. They'd come back with bags of clothes and gadgets, bragging about their great deals. One day, I found a receipt on the table for a designer dress for Olivia. It cost more than what most people make in a week. I confronted them. Scott, where did you get the money for this? And why is Mom paying for your lifestyle? Scott shrugged, not bothered. She's our mom, Kelly. She wants to help. I was furious. Help? You're bleeding her dry. Olivia smirked and chimed in. If she's willing, why not? Besides, what's it to you? I couldn't take it anymore. I had to talk to Mom alone. Mom, you can't keep giving them money. They're using you. Mom just shook her head. I can't abandon them, Kelly, especially not Jerry. I tried to reason with her, but they're not even trying to be responsible. Scott's not looking for a job, and Olivia's just spending your money like water. Mom looked away, her voice barely a whisper. I know, Kelly, but they're my children. I have to help them. I felt helpless, watching my family fall apart. Scott and Olivia were like leeches, draining everything and giving nothing back. And Mom, bless her heart, was too kind to see it. I didn't know how much more I could take. The breaking point was near, and I feared what would happen when we finally reached it. Things took a turn for the worse when Mom suddenly fell ill. It happened so fast. One day she was her usual self, and the next she was bedridden, looking frail and weak. I was at her bedside, holding her hand. Mom, you're going to get through this, I whispered, trying to sound more hopeful than I felt. She gave me a tired smile. I'm just worn out, Kelly. I've lived a good life. Scott and Olivia were nowhere to be seen, probably out spending more of Mom's money. I couldn't hide my anger anymore. Where are they, Mom? Why aren't they here helping? Mom's eyes were sad. They have their own lives, Kelly. Don't be too hard on them. But I couldn't let it go. Their own lives? They're living off you, Mom, and now when you need them the most, they're absent. Mom just sighed. It broke my heart to see her like this, defeated and alone. Then the inevitable happened. Mom passed away quietly one night, with me by her side. Scott and Olivia were out, probably having the time of their lives, oblivious to the tragedy unfolding at home. The funeral was a blur. I remember seeing Scott and Olivia arrive at the funeral looking like they were going to a party instead of mourning a loss. Olivia's dress was too short and flashy even for a funeral. People were whispering, and Larry squeezed my hand, trying to comfort me. After the service, Scott pulled me aside. Kelly, we need to talk about Mom's will. I was still in shock from losing Mom. Now? Can't this wait, Scott? He was insistent. No, it can't. I know she left the house to me. We need to sort this out. I couldn't believe his audacity. Scott, Mom just died. Can't you show a little respect? But Scott was relentless. This is important, Kelly. I'm her son. I deserve it. The day after the funeral, I went to Mom's house to start sorting through her things. When I got there, Olivia answered the door with a smug look. What do you want, Kelly? She sneered. I was taken aback. I came to collect some of Mom's things. Olivia laughed, a cold, harsh sound. Oh, you didn't hear. This is our house now. Scott got everything. Scott appeared behind her, grinning. Yeah, Kelly, Mom changed her will. The house, the money, it's all mine. I felt a surge of anger and disbelief. You're lying. Mom would never do that. Scott shrugged. Believe what you want, but the will is clear. This is my house now. I stood there on the doorstep of the house I grew up in, feeling like a stranger. The realization hit me hard. Not only had I lost my mother, but now I was losing my childhood home to my greedy brother and his manipulative wife. As I walked away, I knew this wasn't the end. I had to fight back for Mom, for my family, and for what was right. But little did I know, the battle ahead would be tougher than anything I'd faced before. I was a bundle of nerves as I walked into the notary's office. The whole situation felt like a bad dream. Losing Mom was hard enough, but fighting with Scott over her will was something I never imagined. The notary, Mr. Richard, was an old family friend. He looked up as I entered, his face somber. "Kelly, I'm sorry for your loss. Let's get straight to the matter at hand." I nodded, trying to steady my voice. "Mr. Richard, Scott says Mom left everything to him. That can't be true." Mr. Richard shuffled some papers. "Well, let's see what the will says." Scott and Olivia walked in just then, all smugness and arrogance. Olivia gave me a triumphant smirk. "Ready to lose, Kelly?" I ignored her and focused on Mr. Richard. He cleared his throat and began reading the will. My heart was pounding in my chest. "And to my son Scott I leave." I braced myself for the worst, the sum of $4,000. Scott's face fell. "What? That's it." Mr. Richard continued, "And to my daughter Kelly, I leave the family home and the remainder of my estate." I couldn't believe it. Relief and disbelief washed over me. Olivia was furious. "That's impossible. She promised us the house." Mr. Richard looked at them sternly. "There's more. It appears your mother made this last will a month ago, after expressing concerns about undue pressure from certain family members." Scott was red with anger. She wanted me to have the house." I couldn't help but feel a sense of justice. "Mom knew what you were doing, Scott. She knew you were using her." Scott turned to me, his eyes blazing. "You did this. You turned her against me." Olivia chimed in, her voice shrill. "We'll contest this. We'll get a lawyer." Mr. Richard raised an eyebrow. "You're free to do so, but be aware if it's found that there was any coercion involved in the previous will, there could be legal consequences." Scott and Olivia looked at each other, their confidence wavering. I stood up, feeling stronger than I had in months. "Mom saw through your greed. She made sure her last wishes were respected." Scott stormed out, cursing under his breath, with Olivia trailing behind him. I stayed back, thanking Mr. Richard. As I left the office, I felt a mix of emotions. Sadness for losing Mom, relief that her last wishes were honored, and a lingering anger at Scott and Olivia's audacity. It was a regular afternoon when Scott stormed into the house, his face red with anger and disbelief. $200,000 for you, and just a measly $4,000 for me? How is that fair, Kelly?" I was sorting through some of Mom's papers, but his outburst made me pause. "Scott, that's what Mom decided. You know she always had her reasons." He slammed his hand on the table, making me jump. "Reasons? What reasons could she possibly have to screw me over like this?" I took a deep breath, trying to keep my cool. "Maybe because you and Olivia have been bleeding her dry for years." Scott's face contorted with rage. "That's not fair. We deserve that money." That's when I found it, tucked away in a drawer, a letter from Mom. Her handwriting was unmistakable. I pulled it out and started reading. Scott's eyes were fixed on me, a mix of curiosity and fear. "What's that?" "It's from Mom." I said, my voice steady. "She explains everything here." The letter laid it out clearly. Mom had originally set aside $200,000 each for Scott and me, but as Scott and Olivia kept asking for money, she started deducting from his share. I looked up at Scott, his face shocked. "By the time she wrote her last will, you'd already taken $96,000, Scott. There was only $4,000 left." Scott staggered back as if he'd been hit. "No, that can't be true." I felt a surge of anger. "It's all here, Scott. Every cent you and Olivia took came out of your inheritance." He looked lost, his eyes darting around the room. But I didn't know. "That's the problem, Scott. You never knew or cared to know. I snapped, my patience wearing thin. He slumped into a chair, burying his face in his hands. What have I done, Kelly? I put the letter down, feeling a mix of pity and frustration. You only got yourself to blame, Scott. You chose this path. Scott left the house that day a broken man. I watched him go, feeling a sense of justice, but also a deep sadness. Our family was torn apart not just by grief, but by greed and ignorance. The house, once a battleground of family feuds, was now eerily quiet. Scott and Olivia had left, cutting off all contact with me. It was both a relief and a curse, leaving me to deal with the aftermath of their chaos. As I sat in the living room, staring at the walls that had witnessed so much, my friend Nancy called. Kelly, have you heard about Scott? I braced myself. No, what now? She hesitated. He's been spotted around town, looking for jobs. And Olivia? She's been seen with different men, flaunting around like she's single. My heart sank. And Jerry, their son? No sign of him, Kelly. It's like they've forgotten they have a child. I slammed my fist on the table, fury boiling inside me. They're irresponsible and selfish. They don't deserve a child. Nancy tried to calm me. Kelly, maybe there's something you can do. Her words sparked an idea. You're right. I'll fight for Jerry. He shouldn't suffer because of them. The next day, I met with a lawyer, a no-nonsense woman named Miss Michelle. I explained everything, my voice trembling with determination. So, you want to pursue custody of your nephew? Miss Michelle asked, her eyes sharp. I nodded firmly. Yes, he's in a toxic environment. I want to give him a better life. Miss Michelle leaned forward. It won't be easy, Kelly, but if you're ready to fight, I'm with you. I felt a surge of determination. I'm ready, whatever it takes. The legal battle that followed was tough. Scott and Olivia were unpredictable, sometimes cooperative, sometimes hostile, but I didn't back down. One evening, after a particularly hard day in court, Larry wrapped his arms around me. You're doing the right thing, Kelly. It's hard but right. I leaned into his embrace, exhausted but hopeful. I just want Jerry to be safe, to have a family that cares. The day the judge granted me temporary custody of Jerry was bittersweet. He was a sweet boy, confused and scared, but he slowly opened up to us. Lauren and Eric adored him, and he brought a new kind of joy into our home. Scott's reaction was a mix of anger and defeat. You've taken everything from me, Kelly. I faced him, my voice steady. I'm protecting Jerry, something you should have done. As Scott stormed off, I realized our relationship might never be repaired. But this wasn't about us. It was about a little boy who needed a stable home. Life with Jerry was a new adventure. There were challenges, of course, but also laughter and love. He was becoming a part of our family, and I was determined to make it permanent. Looking back, I knew I'd made the right decision. It was time for new beginnings for all of us, a chance to heal, grow, and build a future filled with love and stability. That was the legacy I wanted to leave, a stark contrast to the selfishness and greed that had once threatened to tear us apart. The house, once a reminder of family discord, was now filled with laughter and the pitter-patter of little feet. Jerry had become a part of our lives, his presence a constant source of joy and wonder. One evening, as we were tucking him into bed, he looked up at me with those big innocent eyes. Aunt Kelly, am I going to stay here forever? I smoothed his hair, my heart swelling. Yes, Jerry, you're part of our family now. He smiled, his tiny hand gripping mine. I like it here. Lauren and Eric are fun. I kissed his forehead. We love having you here, sweetie. I walked out of his room. Larry was waiting with a proud smile on his face. He's really settling in, isn't he? I nodded, feeling accomplished. He is. We're giving him the life he deserves. The next day, I received a call from Miss Michelle. Kelly, it's official. The court has granted you full custody of Jerry. I nearly dropped the phone, tears of happiness welling up. Thank you, Miss Michelle. Thank you for everything. After hanging up, I shared the news with the family. Lauren and Eric cheered, hugging Jerry in a group embrace. Even Larry had tears in his eyes. "We're a family," Larry said, his voice choked with emotion. "A real, complete family." The journey had been long and full of challenges, but we had come out stronger. I thought about Scott and Olivia, wherever they were. I hoped they would find their way, but my focus was now on the children, our family. In the months that followed, Jerry blossomed. He was no longer the timid boy we first met. He was confident, happy, and loved. One day, while we were all in the garden, Jerry came running up to me with a dandelion in his hand. "Look, Aunt Kelly, I made a wish." I crouched down to his level. "And what did you wish for?" He grinned, his eyes sparkling. "I wished we'd all be together forever." I hugged him tight. "That's the best wish, Jerry, and it's come true." As I looked around at my family, I felt a deep sense of peace. We had weathered the storm and emerged stronger. Our future was filled with hope, love, and the promise of new beginnings. This was our story, a testament to the strength of family and the power of love. It was a future of hope, and we were ready to embrace it with open arms. Families often disagree or face money problems. Still, some manage to stay together and live their daily lives. I don't think it's necessary to decide which is happier. My name is Kelly. Since I was a child, people have called me strange. I don't know what's odd about me. I just think so because others say I am. It's okay to be called strange, but the problem is my parents avoid me because of it. My childhood was lonely. I can read people's minds and know what they're thinking. I don't understand how I do it, but it feels natural to me, like how ordinary people move their hands or breathe. Once, I felt something bad from a coworker my father brought home. I felt we needed to be careful with that person. I warned my mother, but she ignored me. Later, the coworker convinced my father to sign a contract as a debt guarantor. My mother didn't believe my story, but as my father was leaving the table with the coworker, I said, "Something tells me that the phrase joint and several is dangerous. I'm not sure what solidarity means, but be cautious." Because of this, my father decided not to sign as a co-signer. Later, when his colleague went bankrupt and couldn't pay his debts, my father didn't have to take on the burden. Another time, when I was out shopping with my mother, I felt a wave of unease coming from behind me. When I turned around, I saw a man wearing sunglasses and a hat, giving off that uneasy feeling. "Mom, let's go that way," I said. I took my mom's hand, and we walked down a side street. She was confused, wondering what was wrong. As we moved, we heard a shout from the main street, "I've been robbed." The man with the dark vibes had snatched a woman's bag and ran. The woman fell and got hurt. If we had stayed, my mom would have been his target. Because this happened a lot, my parents started to avoid me, thinking I was strange. I felt very lonely. What was normal to me wasn't normal to others. I was the strange, eerie child, so I kept my thoughts to myself. Even when I felt something was wrong, I stopped saying it out loud. I realized that if I didn't say anything, people wouldn't think I was strange. My younger sister Olivia is 4 years younger than me. She's a typical child, unlike me. As I got darker and darker, Olivia became more adorable and cute. My parents clearly preferred her to me. They thought, "Olivia is lovely, but Kelly is dark and shadowy. Kelly is odd, even though she doesn't say strange things anymore." I pretended to be normal to avoid the pain my power caused me. I grew up without my parents' love. Whether it was because my attempts to seem normal made me seem unusual, or because once I was labeled as strange, it couldn't be erased. My sister, on the other hand, was raised with their love. She noticed my parents' coldness towards me and began to look down on me. She used to say, "I don't like being around my sister because it transfers the darkness to me." I'm very attractive, but my sister affects my image negatively. She started saying things to put me down whenever she could. My parents just tolerated her behavior and never corrected her. One day, a scout from an entertainment company approached her. They asked her to join their agency when I was in my 3rd year of junior high, and she was in her 6th year of elementary school. She said, "It's obvious because I'm attractive. They said I could be on TV." My sister was already thinking about a career, which made our parents happy. I told her, "You should take it slow and think about it. I have a bad feeling about this." I didn't want her to get into trouble, so I shared my feelings, which I had kept hidden for so long. My sister, unaware of my unusual ability, said, "Are you jealous because you're not attractive and can't communicate with others like me? Don't be strange and don't stand in my way." Her face turned red and she reached for me. My parents, who knew about my ability, either forgot about it or were too excited to see their younger daughter in the spotlight. They stood by her and accused me. I then decided to remain silent. I told myself that speaking up wouldn't lead to anything good. One day, a student teacher was scheduled to visit my middle school. He was a male college student who wanted to be a physical education teacher. He spoke about his educational dreams and gave a powerful speech to the teachers and students. He became very popular, especially with the female students. As he responded to the loud voices of the female students, I felt a wave of dread wash over me. I had made it a rule to keep my abilities hidden, but when I saw that my classmates were in danger, I decided to break my own rule. I approached a teacher who seemed to understand. I said, "I know this is unexpected, but please believe me and help me." The teacher was confused by my sudden statement, but did as I asked and staked out a specific location after school. I kept the details from the teacher because I knew he wouldn't believe me if I explained everything. The teacher listened to me without needing an explanation. The next day, the whole school was in an uproar. The student trainee had broken the law by entering the women's restroom with a video camera. The teacher had staked out the area and caught him within 20 minutes. Because of this, the female students were not victims of voyeurism and were spared from being humiliated. Meanwhile, my younger sister enthusiastically joined the entertainment agency that scouted her. However, there were no lessons or auditions, just high fees to pay. Then, the agency suddenly closed down. My sister had been scammed. She screamed and cried, blaming me. "It's all because of you. You ruined my future. It's your fault." Even though it was an absurd accusation, she believed it. This belief helped her cope, but it was a disaster for me. My parents didn't say anything ridiculous, but they did notice she was distancing herself from me and getting closer to them. As the strange child, I felt lonely again. While I was glad I had helped everyone at school, I worried my actions would make things worse for me. The next day, the teacher who had listened to me called me to the staff room. I was scared of being labeled as strange again. When I entered, the teacher said quietly, "You knew this was going to happen about a week ago, didn't you?" Without warning, I knew it was pointless to lie. So, I told him about my mysterious power. It was the first time someone understood what I was going through. The teacher explained that he knew someone with my ability, his aunt. "I've known about her for a long time." "I understand you have a lot on your mind," he said. "You'll feel better if you get advice from someone who understands," the teacher said. Then he introduced me to Nicole. She looked me in the eyes and said, "It's natural to be concerned, but you don't have to suffer." Her kind, deep eyes seemed to see everything and drew me in. Nicole had the same power as me since childhood and had spent her life troubled and hiding it. Hearing her story, someone who had gone through similar experiences started to free me from my fears and doubts. From that day, Nicole became my mentor, though she laughed when I called her that and said, "Just call me Nicole." Nicole changed my life. I had lived a modest, shadowy existence, hiding who I was, but she transformed my consciousness. Gradually, I began to live my daily life as a normal girl. However, since the incident with the entertainment agency, my sister and I have grown apart. She rarely talks to me, and when she does, it's usually to complain or make fun of me. My psychic abilities couldn't predict her emotional shifts. She would say things like, "What's the big deal about you getting accepted to college? Aren't you just a mental flower garden?" My sister had failed the entrance exam for her first choice high school, even though she was told she would definitely pass. She ended up at a high school she considered her second choice. She was furious when I got accepted to her top choice university. I wasn't happy about it or bragging to her, she just made assumptions and disrespected me. My parents only consoled and coddled my sister during her difficult time and told me to stay away and not bother her. Despite growing up and becoming a better person since meeting Nickel, my sister still didn't seem to like me. I guess my sister doesn't like me unless I'm dark and gloomy. My sister is very intelligent, so it's surprising she didn't pass the high school entrance exam. She was very frustrated and put that frustration into her studies at the high school she enrolled in. She ended up being the top student for 4 years and got accepted into a difficult national university on her first try. She said, "I got into the hardest university. Yours isn't as good as mine." I responded to her satisfied remark with a lighthearted, "Yeah, I guess so." I knew getting too involved with her would be a bad idea. My sister took my light response as an insult and lashed out at me. My parents were scared of her temper and could only watch and worry when she got like that. They blamed me, calling me a liar and a troubled daughter. I wanted to argue about which one of us was really the troubled daughter, but I kept quiet because I didn't want to make things worse. Aside from my sister, I was nearing the end of my college career and needed to decide about my life. I'm not as dark and withdrawn as I used to be, but I'm still not sociable and doubt my ability to form successful relationships. My ability to sense people's negative emotions makes it hard. I can understand positive feelings, but negative thoughts hurt me. I've been overwhelmed by negative emotions at school and almost stopped trusting people. I was worried if I could do well in a corporate job. I talked to my mentor, Nickel, about this. I was sure she had faced similar challenges and wanted to know how she overcame them. She said, "I went through the same difficulties you're facing now. Maybe you should do something like I did." She told me she had spent a long time working as a fortune teller or counselor, helping people with their problems. She said, "With your ability, you can really help others and contribute to the world. Working freelance means you don't have to be part of an organization and don't have to deal with people's emotions or relationships, which you're afraid of. It's the perfect job for people like us." I decided to pursue the same job with my mentor's encouragement. She showed me how to do the job and find customers. Thanks to the internet, I can now work from home. When I told my parents and younger sister that I would work from home instead of getting a job after graduation, they asked, "What exactly is it? What kind of job is it? What type of work is it? Then at least you should do our housework. What about living costs?" I expected these questions, but I was disappointed they weren't more supportive. While I understood their expectations for housework and money, it still made me sad. I could see my sister disrespecting me even more in the future, which added to my sadness. So, my life as a work-from-home employee began. There were no job offers at first, and it was a trial and error process, but with my mentor's help, I gradually got work. I couldn't contribute money to the household for about a year, so I focused on housework. My father was not pleased, but my mother was relieved and kept him in check. When I finally contributed money after about a year, my father mocked me, saying, "Huh, you finally got some money, didn't you?" Despite this, the amount of housework I had to do did not decrease, and my life remained the same. 3 years later, my sister graduated from university and decided to work for a foreign company. The pay was good, and she told me, "Unlike you, I'm not a parasite. I work outside the home." She mocked my work-from-home job, saying, "I have no idea what you're doing. Working from home? Isn't that just for fun? You're a parasite in your own home. My pay will increase, and I'm sure I'll be making 15 times more than you. Someone like you could never make that much money." After a year and a half, my sister was promoted to chief and continued to brag about her good salary. However, she didn't contribute anything to the household or help with any chores. She left the laundry, cleaning, meal preparation, and everything else to my mother and me. My mother and I shared the work, but she delegated most of it to me, so I ended up doing almost everything. "Olivia, you need to take better care of yourself," I said. "Instead of spending all your money on yourself, you should help out with the household expenses." She snapped back, "You're a waste of space. You should do all the housework. I'm saving money for my future." My parents sided with her, saying it couldn't be helped because she's my sister. I wanted to stay in my current job because it was comfortable, but I began to wonder what I should do with my life. Then my sister made a shocking announcement. "I'm getting married." There was no warning, and my parents and I were stunned. "He's a wealthy man who earns more than $20 million a year." "Oh, I'm sorry I became happy first, sister, but isn't marriage just a pipe dream for someone like you?" She said she'd bring her boyfriend over the following Sunday. When the day came, we were in a state of panic due to the rapid events. The man she brought was young, dressed in a suit and tie, and looked capable. "My name is Michael. It's a pleasure to meet you. I've come to propose to Olivia," he said with dignity and politeness. "I told you he was wonderful, didn't I?" "I'll be happy with him," Olivia said. My father, despite being impressed by Michael, asked, "Michael, what is your job?" "I'm currently training at a company owned by a friend of my father's," Michael replied. Olivia explained, "His father is the company's president. He is training outside the company to be his successor." Olivia seemed overjoyed at the prospect of marrying the future president of a company. We talked about various topics before Michael left. Despite a few gaps in the conversation, my parents seemed pleased with him. However, I felt a shadow of darkness from Michael. I couldn't explain it, but I felt it. I couldn't stay silent any longer, fearing that marrying a man with this type of darkness would make my sister unhappy. "Listen, Olivia, you've only been dating him for less than 5 months. Get to know him a little better before you decide to marry him," I said, feeling alarmed. I couldn't explain and tried to reassure my sister with something vague. "What exactly are you talking about, sister? He is a man of great distinction and a future president. You're just upset because you're comparing your situation to my happiness." "You're a pitiful person, aren't you?" she snapped. My parents also yelled at me to stay out of the way. "Such a wealthy man will soon be our son-in-law. You're a nobody, so at least stop interfering with your sister's happiness." It was clear they wanted their daughter to marry a rich man so they could live in peace in their old age. I was filled with rage because I couldn't tell my sister about the dark shadow I sensed around her. In the meantime, they got engaged, and a meeting between the two families took place. My sister's fiance's parents seemed just as respectable as Michael, but I still felt the same dark presence around them. However, the wedding day arrived before I could warn my sister and parents, who were too excited to listen. "The president of our company is attending today's reception. Do you know how talented and promising I am? It's a great honor, but you, my stay-at-home sister, can't even imagine how great it is," my sister said before leaving the house, adding her usual words of disrespect. They pledged their eternal love at the hotel's wedding hall, and then entered the reception hall. My sister looked happy with a big smile on her face, but I was concerned about how long that happiness would last. The president of the company gave the speech as the guest of honor. It was a congratulatory speech that praised my sister, and she was pleased with it. After the speeches, drinks and food were brought to each table. The food looked delicious, but I began to feel uncomfortable. Nothing had been brought to my table. At first, I thought it was just a delay, but other tables had already received drinks and hors d'oeuvres one after another. It was obviously strange. I was the only one who hadn't received anything. The people at my table noticed and started to feel uncomfortable too. At that moment, my sister came up to me and whispered with a laugh, Free food is not for people like you. This food is too good for you. Just go home and eat potato chips. Leave our wedding gift and go home." My eyebrows shot up at her outrageous words. The groom was grinning and nodding from his seat. Even my parents pretended to be surprised at first, but then they said, "Well, Olivia is right." I was shocked, and then a surge of anger followed. "I can't believe you could be this cruel. Father and mother, how can you accept such rudeness?" I said. My parents gave me a bitter look but didn't scold my sister. "I understand. I'm going home, but you'll regret this," I said. "What's with that threat? Is it the howl of a loser?" my sister mocked. The hall buzzed with excitement at this turn of events when a man stood up suddenly. "I'm the groom's brother, Larry. My brother and parents are scum, but the bride is even worse. I can't take it anymore," he said. Larry continued, "Father, your company went bankrupt half a year ago, yet you still pretend to be its president. You're trying to take advantage of your daughter-in-law and her family. Michael, you can't be president anymore either. You're unemployed and trying to leech off your wife." The buzz in the hall grew louder at Larry's words. My sister, turning bright red, yelled, "What do you mean? You cheated me. What do you mean you're unemployed?" Her face gradually turned from red to blue, and her eyes filled with tears. My parents were also clueless and began screaming. The screams of my family echoed through the hall. Both the groom and his parents were stunned and silent. In fact, before the wedding, I had received Larry's confession and apology. I had asked Larry not to hesitate to speak his mind if something happened during the reception. As my sister blamed Larry with anger and resentment on her face, another man stood up, looking like he had enough. It was the president of my sister's company. "Enough of this. This is not right," he said. "You have no right to blame the groom. What makes you think you can criticize his brother?" His voice was filled with anger, and my sister looked frightened. "I didn't attend your ceremony for your sake," he said. "If you weren't Kelly's sister, to whom I owe so much, I wouldn't be here." My sister's eyes went wide when the president suddenly mentioned my name. "Kelly? What does she have to do with this?" The president explained, "Kelly has saved many companies from crisis. She is like a goddess to us business owners. Under her mentor's guidance, she started as a fortune teller and life consultant, and then became an advisor for corporate revitalization. Although she had no managerial knowledge, she used her powers to show companies the right path. One after another, the companies she advised experienced amazing recoveries. Because of this, she is known as a teacher and a goddess. Your company was also consulted 7 months ago, and with her advice, it became stronger." My sister, shocked, said, "Oh no, I didn't know anything about that. Aren't you just a stay-at-home nobody? Thanks to Kelly, my business is going well. I have a good job and now earn more than you do. I put enough money into the house, but my parents don't care about me." "What do you think all that money was for?" "It wasn't Olivia's," the president clarified. My parents seemed to have misunderstood. There was no way Olivia could have brought money into the house. The wedding party broke up in confusion. The wedding gifts were fully refunded to everyone. My sister sobbed, "How are we going to pay for this ceremony now that we don't have the money from the gifts?" Besides, I relied on Michael's income and signed a contract for a condominium in my name. I can't pay the rent by myself if I'm unemployed. Michael coldly replied, "You signed the contract on your own, didn't you?" "I don't know anything about it. Divorce, 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 you crook." My sister's marriage quickly fell apart. It was a mess, and this chaos was the result of his malicious behavior. Afterwards, my sister divorced Michael and demanded alimony. Michael and his parents couldn't afford to pay a large amount, and they barely managed to cover the wedding hall costs. They couldn't afford the condo they had signed for, so it was canceled before they ever lived in it. However, the loan balance remained a heavy burden on my sister. The outrageous behavior at the wedding spread quickly among the company officials who attended. My sister lost credibility, and the company president demoted her to a lower position. She lost her pride as an elite employee and wanted to quit, but she had to keep working to repay the loan. She ended up doing trivial work in a basement reference room, work that may or may not have been important. Michael and his parents failed in their attempt to leech off my sister. They are now struggling to make ends meet by working day jobs. Larry, Michael's older brother, separated himself from his parents and younger brother. My parents easily gave up on my sister when she hit rock bottom and came to me for help. But I said, I don't want to be pushed around by you guys anymore. I'm cutting you off. Goodbye. With that, I left home, signed a lease on a new apartment, and began a new life. I took in my sister, who had fallen on hard times and was struggling to make ends meet. Her salary had been drastically reduced, and she couldn't afford to contribute to our parents' household. Naturally, I also stopped putting money into my parents' house. Unable to lower their standard of living, my parents quickly became exhausted and complained every day. My business is going well, and I am helping many companies and people positively. After the wedding incident, I started dating Larry, and he recently asked me to be his girlfriend. If things continue as they are, marriage is on the horizon. I can't wait to build a happy life with Larry, who has a clear heart and no dark shadows.